radio for the masses.
Headline edition, July 8, 1947. The Army Air Forces has announced that a flying disc has been found and is now in the possession of the Army.
If the game is rigged, change the game. Game changer.
I occasionally think how quickly our differences worldwide would vanish if we were facing an alien threat from outside this world.
This is Fade to Black with your host, Jimmy Church, on the Game Changer Radio Network and KGRA, the Global Radio Alliance.
I need your help to get to the year 1985.
You're listening to Fade to Black with Jimmy Church on the Game Changer Network.
Good evening, Fade to Black. Bespoke Radio for the masses. Yeah, it gets longer every night, doesn't it? It does. Masses. I love Frank Zappa. Today's Monday, January 7th, 2019. Just 7 days into the new year, 358 days left. As always, we are live from a bunker somewhere in the middle of beautiful downtown Burbank, California. And I would like to welcome everybody listening all around the world, all across the United States. Hither and thither, to and fro, back and forth, up and down, east and west, north and south, far and near. This is Fade to Black for KJCR, the Game Changer Network, and KGRA, the Planets. I am your host, Jimmy Church. What is cracking, everybody? How you doing? How you doing? All right. 2019 lays out in front of us, and we've got our sights laser focused on 2019. Tonight, been looking forward to this show for a few years now. Isaac Arthur is finally here. And tonight we're going to discuss alien technology. We're going to discuss faster than light space travel. We're going to talk about ET contact. And with Isaac, now that's just like three things I'm laying out there on the table. With Isaac, and if you're familiar with Isaac, you know that we can go in any direction tonight. And most likely we will. Now, if I can get these three subjects in with Isaac, we're all winners. And I'm going to knock this one out of the park tonight with all of you. But Isaac is one of the brightest, one of the best. And since the very beginning of his presentations, he had me. And Rita has endured Isaac over the years, many, many, many nights, many repeats. I just go back and I listen to him over and over again. And my favorite way of his material is I listen to it in the dark without the visuals. I go back and I watch him, but I really absorb his stuff when I just listen to it. He is absolutely amazing, and just look forward to this tonight. And this is going to be one of those shows you're going to want to listen to over and over again. We're going to have Isaac on again very soon because there's other subjects that we need to get into rather deeply, and he is the absolute best. And now I am sure that tonight on the show, as you listen to Arthur and I talk and have our conversation, where you're going to go, oh, that's where Jimmy is getting this. Oh, I get, well, yeah, okay. I listen to Isaac a lot. But the other thing that I enjoy about Isaac is that the first time that I listened to him, and if you go back to Fade to Black, you go back years ago, and the things that I presented and where my mind was going, You know, and I was always in search of, right? Well, I found Isaac, and I'm listening to him like, this guy gets it. He gets me, right? This is what I enjoy. This is right on. This is perfect. Well, that's what's going to happen tonight. And I'm really looking forward to this. All right. Now, tomorrow night, now talking about an amazing week here on Fade to Black. Tomorrow night, another first-time guest, Carolyn Ford, is here. That's right. The guardian of Einstein, the ancient crystal skull of consciousness. That's right. Carolyn Ford is with us tomorrow, so we're going to do a full night of crystal skulls. And everybody knows we've got a lot of crystal skulls, and here's Jose. Jose grew up sitting next to Einstein. And I was talking to Carolyn and about Jose. She goes, Jose is, he got energized from Einstein. I said, I know. And that's what we're going to do tomorrow night. Yeah, I got all kinds of little crystal skulls in here. There's another one right there. That one's real cool. And then I got my little cruiser, dude. My little cruiser. And, of course, Skull Vodka. Skull Vodka bottle in the studio. I got the big ones down over down on the floor over there. I should bring out the big crystal Skull Vodka. Okay. All right. So that's where am I at? That's tomorrow night. Wednesday night, David Wilcock is back, and we are going to discuss what is ahead for us in 2019. Very important show. An amazing week that we've got here. And, of course, Thursday night is Fader night. Teresa Yannaris is going to be here, Divine Frequency on the airwaves. And, of course, followed by open lines all night long. Now, don't forget to head over to jimmychurchradio.com where you can follow, like, and subscribe. Of course, there is onstellar.com. Twitter, you can follow me there at jchurchradio. Facebook, Jimmy Church Radio is right over there. And, of course, YouTube. And hello to everybody out there that happens to be watching. It's kind of weird for me. Radio is something that is a one-on-one thing. There was no video, right? There was never video. And you were able to, as a broadcaster and as a host, you just did your own thing, right? Your imagination is going. Today, now we've got cameras in the studio, and it's just not the same thing, but there you go. So it's like radio and television. So every night I have to wear a clean shirt. I have to shave, right? I have to comb my hair. But back in the day, right, you could just show up wearing shorts and wear the same AC/DC T-shirt, your Ozzy Blizzard of Oz T-shirt. You could wear it 7 days in a row. Nobody's going to know. Nobody's going to know if you've shaved or not, but it's not that kind of party anymore. But hello, everybody out there. All right. Hashtag F2B on Twitter is where we hang out each night, and that is the sandbox. And if you have any questions or comments during tonight's show or any other show, by the way, just use hashtag F2BQ. Tonight with Isaac Arthur, you're going to have questions, and it is absolutely imperative that you post them up on hashtag F2BQ on Twitter. Okay, and I will get to them all. I always do. You can also email Jimmy at jimmychurchradio.com. All right. I announced a couple of months ago, it was about a month ago, that come January 1st, we would have our new website up. Now, Drew the Geek, sent me this press release today. For you. This is Drew. This is Drew's writing, by the way. This is an official release from Drew the Geek. The Jimmy Church Radio website is due for an overhaul and a new look. To that end, this week you may find some small glitches as I work on the cool, geeky stuff on the back end of the website. If all goes well, the Fader Knot should have a new look by the end of this weekend. The new site will have easier upgrades and signups, more searchable archives, faster load times, and on-site HTTPS premium chat for the Bunker, Bacon Bar, and Game Changer. And yes, we will have a better way to make sure that Game Changers get their shirts and hats. And then he follows that up with, and maybe even a special blog by me to let you know about site updates, changes, and things to be aware of. Signed, Drew. Drew, do we have dancing girls? You guys are too quick on Twitter. Yeah, I know, right? Right? That's Drew says yes. Drew says yes. All right, and this announcement came out today. It was out under the radar with all the other political stuff that's going on, and I don't do politics on this show. I just don't do it. I do the conspiracy of politics, including this announcement today. President Trump is saying that Washington and Pyongyang have been in talks over the venue for his second meeting with North Korean leader Kim Fatty Fat. So there you go. All right, come join us for the 2019 Conscious Life Expo right here in Los Angeles, California at the LAX Hilton. And it goes on from February 22nd through February 25th. I can't believe it. It's a month away. Such a huge, huge fun event. And again, last year, 10,000 people or 15,000 through the doors over those 3 days. Think about that for a second. It's massive. It's great. And come and hang out with us because this year we're going to be celebrating the 50th anniversary of Chariots of the Gods with Eric Von Daniken. I will be hosting the panel with Eric, Linda Moulton Howe, Jason Martell, Billy Carson, Rabbi Ariel Bar Zadok, and of course myself. And that will be Friday night. That is the keynote panel kickoff on Friday evening. And you've got to get your tickets for that. That is a separate event, and it will sell out. George Norrie, Nassim Haramein, Robert Schock, Danny Brinkley, Grant Cameron, Julia Mossbridge, and another 50 speakers will be presenting at the 2019 Conscious Life Expo. Just go to consciouslifeexpo.com for tickets and info and a full conference schedule. And on top of that, we have a banner over at jimmychurchradio.com. Click on that. It'll take you straight there. Okay? All right. Where am I at? Oh, Hoffman's Optics. Hoffman'sOptics.com. They build my night vision goggles, right? The Jimmy Church model. Yeah. The deep blues. And you can get your very own. Hoffman'sOptics.com. Click on the banner over at jimmychurchradio.com. Go and talk to Alec Hoffman. The best premium night vision goggles anywhere on the planet. And Alec is going to be with us on Fade to Black on Monday at the beginning of the show to talk about all the new products and what is going on over there at Hoffman's Optics. So don't forget to check that out on Monday. And you can subscribe to our podcast. It's just $2 a month. Click on our podcast banner over on the website. And also the Fade or Not membership section. Become a Fade or Not today and just go over to jimmychurchradio.com. The new website, we're rolling it out this week. Are you excited? You excited? I am. It looks good. And don't forget to visit all of our sponsors here at jimmychurchradio.com. Click on all of their banners. Ancient Life Oil, Life Change Tea, River Moon Coffee, the absolute best coffee in the world. The best. You know what I enjoy night vision, night watches, sky watches, time travel, the universe, space, all conspiracies and everything else. But you know what I really enjoy? You know what I really, really enjoy? I enjoy when I get that email. Church, that Fade to Black blend you guys are selling, you're not hyping it up enough, man. You're not hyping it up enough. This is absolutely the best coffee in the world. Thank you. Well, it really, really is. It is the best. So go get yourself some today. All right. F2B blend is I think that's it. Is that it? F2B blend, I believe, is what you use, the promo code. All right. 15% off of your order. Okay. Let's get this show cracking. Happy birthday to today. Nicolas Cage is 55 years old. And now, aside from everything else that Nicolas has done, and honeymoon in Vegas, right? Yeah, pretty good. Aside from all of that stuff, especially the early stuff, his first movie, Fast Times at Ridgemont High. And I know you're going to go, wait a minute, he's not in Fast Times at Ridgemont High. Yes, he is. When they go into All-American Burger, right? And they shot from the counter, and you can see the cooks in the back. That's Nick Cage. And he looks right at the camera. And it's a young Nick Cage. He's in two scenes in the movie. But there you go. Nicolas Cage today is 55 years old. And Jeremy Renner today is 48, the Hurt Locker. And, of course, he plays Hawkeye in the Avengers. And also one of the greats, Kenny Loggins, today is 71. Kenny Loggins. Wow. That's incredible. 71 years old. On this day in history, OTD 1785, it went down. Frenchman Jean-Pierre Blanchard and American John Jeffries travel from Dover, England to Calais, France in a gas balloon, becoming the first to cross the English Channel by air. That's a big day, and it happened in 1785. Fader fact. Now, look, I whip these facts out. They're all vetted. They're all real. Okay? But listen to this, all right? The 1980 U.S. hockey team was playing the USSR in a pre-Olympics exhibition. It was revealed that during the game that a Soviet player had a gun under his jersey. The player, air quotes, the player was a KGB agent used to prevent players from defecting to the West. That is your Fader fact, and you really need to think about it. Oh, my, oh, my. And I guess it worked. Tonight, very special guest, Isaac Arthur, is here. I'm really looking forward to this conversation tonight. And he has a way of presenting technology and theories and ideas and physics and the universe in a way that we all can understand. And certainly with my brain, I've been able to absorb it. Tonight, get comfortable. It's going to be one of those conversations. Tomorrow night, Carolyn Ford is here. We're going to talk about Einstein, the ancient crystal skull. Wednesday night, David Wilcock is going to be here. Now, we're going to talk a little bit about 2018 and disclosure, what happened and what didn't, right? And then we're going to take a look forward ahead into 2019 and see what's in store for our community, right? The Great Awakening, disclosure. All of that on Wednesday night. Thursday is another Fader night with Teresa Yannaris. Divine Frequency on the airwaves. Open lines all night long. All right, let me hit this coffee. Talking about Isaac Arthur. The one thing, if I've tried to get one thing into everybody's heads here on this show, is the one thing that it just absolutely blows my mind. And that is how far we have come in understanding our universe in such a short period of time. One of the things that I talk about so much is that if somebody was born in 1890, right, lived for 100 years, died in 1990, what the things that they would have seen in their lifetime, going from, horse and buggies, right, all the way through to Van Halen. Think about that and all of the technology that happened in the middle of all of that. Stereos, television, radio, cars, jets, planes, rockets, Apollo, space travel, right? Lasers, man, the internet. I mean, it's just nuts. It's nuts. And I appreciate that. And when I look at somebody's date of birth and when I just think about what they have seen over that period of time, it doesn't even eclipse, in my opinion, what we have learned since 1995. 1995. The progress that we have made on a technical level, not only with our civilian lives, our consumer lives, and the lives that we live every single day around us, the advances have been just leapfrogging over each other. And what we went through from 1995 to the year 2000, one of the biggest technical explosions in the history of all mankind. And to go from tube televisions to flat screens, to go from the internet, of where the internet was in 1995 to what happened by the year 2000, and everything else, cell phones, crazy, GPS, and I can just go on and on and on. The technological achievements have been tremendous. And that's around us. That's what we know about. It's out there, what we know now about our universe, our galaxy, dark energy, dark matter, the expansion of the universe, right? There has been so much learned that I now can look back at my own life, just like I've looked back at others, and go, holy crap, I lived through all of this. I've seen it. I've seen it happen. And it's incredible to me because I can go back and think about how many planets that we knew about outside of our solar system in 1995, right? 0. Two, right? Think about that. Today, the known planets is one thing, 5,000, 4,000, 5,000 that are cataloged. Another 5,000 that are registered and ready to go. And another 100 billion in our galaxy. 100 billion. 100 billion. And I need that thought, that very germ of an idea into everybody's heads. Think about that. It doesn't get any more extraordinary, more extreme. You know, and when we go back to Galileo or Copernicus and their knowledge and how they were trying to piece this thing together with the sun and our solar system, and they're noticing things out there and they're trying to figure it out, right? That was big stuff. What we know today blows that just... That's where we are today. So now let's take it to the next step. How rare is life? How rare is it? Because in our own lifetime, going back just a short decade or two ago, we were questioning things. Well, you know, how special are we? How unique are we? We're seeing things in the skies, and we've had visitations, and we've seen things. We've got Roswell and Rendlesham and all these other events. You know, Aztec, sure, right? Maury Island. We've got these things. But how rare is life? And that was the question that everybody. Now it's not. We've moved on from that, because today it's not how rare is life. It's just how much of it is out there. How old is it? How advanced is it? Right? How much is there? That's the other side, and that's where we are today. It all comes from one thing. Our knowledge of the universe. And Edwin Hubble in 1925, there was nothing. The universe was our galaxy. By 1929, we found a second galaxy and a third. And started to think, oh, wait a minute. We are not the universe. The universe is, to today, because of the Hubble telescope and what we understand what is really going on with our universe, this is where my mind just goes, poof. It's unbelievably huge. It's way beyond our wildest dreams. And now today, coupled with everything else, now we are understanding the expansion of the visible universe. Why? Well, I'm going to be talking to Isaac about this here in a few minutes. When now today, one of the things that cosmologists and physicists are talking about now is the visible universe. Why? Faster than light. Now, if the universe on its outer edges is expanding to the point where these galaxies and objects on the extreme edges of our visible universe are now surpassing the speed of light, then once they go, they are now ahead of light. Can't see them anymore. They're still there, but it's now traveling faster than the speed of light. So our universe is only what we can see, even theoretically see. So think about that, and that's where we are today. Isaac Arthur presents in his video series not only all of these, the physics side of this and the cosmology side of this, but the theoretical side, and tying all of that into the ET or alien contact question and the Fermi paradox. And if life is out there, what's the status of it? Not only visiting us, but populating other celestial bodies and discovering other galaxies and interstellar travel and how they would do it, what these ships are like, what the propulsion systems are like. Are they at war? Are they trading? Right? And are they visiting here? Think about that for a second. And when you have somebody on this show tonight like Isaac, it goes back to the very fabric of what this show was about, which is science. And this show and our community are starting to cross. We're starting to understand each other. And the conversation of not only ET and UFOs, but mainstream and science is what is going on all over this planet. And this question of disclosure, which we'll be talking to Isaac about this in a few minutes, this question of disclosure is getting closer and closer and closer. Just a few years ago, it seemed unachievable. It didn't seem like we were going to get there. Today, everybody is talking about it. It's the best part of what I do. It's the best part. When I'm going to get out of here so I can get Arthur on here, but this past weekend over on Coast to Coast, I had Tyler Glockner on the show from Secure Team and Chad Kalick. And both of those guests, and if you think about this, Tyler's YouTube channel, 2 million subscribers, it's just past it, right? Chad Kalick, who not only has been a director of documentaries, but also director and producer of television programming on the subject of the paranormal, is now visiting the UFO subject too as well. And this is a global audience. This is a huge thing. And it was an easy show to do. And it was a show that the Coast audience that is reaching back to me is like, this is exactly where we are at. This is exactly it. Art would have been proud. And think about that. All right? So that's the show tonight. That's where I'm at. If we can just understand one thing, is how much we have learned in the last 20 years. It's been an incredible ride. This is Fade to Black. I am your host, Jimmy Church. Our guest tonight, Isaac Arthur. Tomorrow night, Carolyn Ford. Wednesday night, David Wilcock. Thursday night's Fader Night with Teresa Yannaris, followed by open lines all night long. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Follow me on Twitter at JChurchRadio. We're on the Game Changer Network and KGRA, The Planet. I'll be right back. Stay with us.
This is Nicole Church, daughter of you-know-who, and you're listening to Fade to Black on JimmyChurchRadio.com and the Game Changer Network.
You're listening to Jimmy Church, Fade to Black.
Fade to Black will now pause for alien identification.
The station that talks the net. KGRA Radio. When you take the beans from Central America with dashes of Indonesian and African mixed in and then roast it to the dark side of Fade to Black, you create the ultimate brew of fringe. Introducing the Fade to Black blend from River Moon Coffee. Yes, River Moon's darkest customized roast was created for the love of Fade to Black. The alchemy of masterful roasting and smoking the beans is in every sip of this full-bodied, dark Java. I need my coffee dark, deep, with distinct bittersweet chocolate highlights, just like the bunker. Leaning further into the darkness of the roast is Fade to Black Blend from River Moon Coffee. Just click on the banner at jimmychurchradio.com and use the promo code F2BBLEND for 15% off of your order today. Go Beckley Teppy. This is Jimmy Church of Fade to Black, and you can get our podcast for just $2 per month. All you have to do is click on the podcast banner over at jimmychurchradio.com.
Hey folks, guess what the number one phrase that Life Change Tea receives by email? You ready? We love this tea. We love this tea. Time after time, week after week, we love this tea. Life Change Tea gives you more energy, a beautiful cleansing, and fulfills its slogan perfectly. The tea that makes you go. So if you want to be on your health game, log on to getthetea.com and order Life Change Super Strength Tea. Packages come in a 1-month supply, and when you brew this stuff, wait until you see the results. Aren't we all about the results? And with a lot of people's health struggling, we can use a little bit of help. Doctors will tell you disease starts in the gut. So log on to getthetea.com. That's getthetea.com. Be our next email saying, I love this tea. I love this tea. Get the tea at getthetea.com. Helping America one tea bag at a time.
9 out of 10 geneticists agree.
Fade to Black is not your father's radio show on the Game Changer Radio Network and KGRA, The Planet.
Do you want to lose weight but have no idea where to begin? The Fast Start Diet, a 3-day weight loss plan, is the answer. 3 days of nutritionally balanced, calorie-restricted meals delivered right to your door. No shopping, no measuring, and no cooking. Everything is prepared for you and ready to eat at home or on the go. The Fast Start Diet has all the amazing benefits of intermittent fasting without starving. We've helped thousands of people who have struggled to reach their weight loss goals. Isn't it time we helped you? With the Fast Start Diet, you'll lose weight and feel great.
Find Fast Start Diet on Amazon or go to faststartdiet.com and use promo code TALK to get 10% off your first box. And as a special bonus, Fast Start will include their #1 rated Lipo3 appetite suppressant spray free with your order. This is Jimmy Church. And whatever your diet plans are, do what I did. Go to faststartdiet.com.
Hi, this is Rob Reiner from Anvil, and you're listening to JimmyChurchRadio.com.
What's up? I'm Chris. What up? This is Kyle Massey, and you're listening to Jimmy Church Radio.
All right, welcome back, Fade to Black. Tonight, Isaac Arthur is here. Tomorrow night, Carolyn Ford, Einstein, Ancient Crystal Skull. Wednesday night, David Wilcock. He is back. Thursday night's Fader night. Teresa Yannaris, of course, is going to be here, followed by open lines all night long. Tonight, it's all about Isaac. Isaac Arthur. He's the host of Science and Futurism with Isaac Arthur on YouTube. He's got over 300,000 subscribers right now. Probably more than that. And nearly 200 episodes covering topics like colonizing the solar system, interstellar travel, the Fermi paradox, artificial intelligence, and other topics representing possible future paths and challenges for humanity. Isaac received his degree in physics from Kent State University, graduating top of his class at the age of 20, and remained there for graduate studies before joining the U.S. Army and serving in Iraq. He also worked as a civilian researcher at the Air Force Institute of Technology in Dayton, Ohio. After the military, he returned to his home and serves as the chairman of the board of elections for his area when he's not working on his channel. And, of course, his website is isaacarthur.net. The links are over at jimmychurchradio.com. I would like to welcome for the first time to Fade to Black, Isaac Arthur. Isaac, good evening. How are you?
Doing great, Jimmy. Thanks for having me on.
Oh, it's been a long time coming, but we've got you here. And before we get started, Isaac, you get the first-time guest disclaimer. Yeah, you ready for it?
What's that?
Yeah, the first-time guest disclaimer, which is this. Isaac, is just you and I sitting on my couch having a conversation as friends, and where the conversation starts, it starts, and where it ends, but we're going to end as friends. See? Simple. You ready?
Sounds great. Let's go.
Let's do it. You know, okay, I actually want to start here, and if I can catch you off guard, if I'm going to do it anywhere, it might be right now, which is this. You've got fantastic writing. You've got a great team behind you. The presentations are awesome, and all of that. And okay, and we're going to be discussing that tonight. But what about you? You talk about E.T. and aliens so much and present this information, but have you seen something strange in the sky?
Well, actually, yeah, but in every case I've had it happen with me personally. And again, I can only speak to my own, what I've personally seen. I've been there for a couple of times where someone has seen something, but it was always one of those cases where I don't think that's what you think it is because, it's got navigation lights on it. So,
right.
I live near enough airports where sometimes folks will be surprised and see one turn overhead and say, that can't be, that can't be a normal aircraft. It's towing too fast. Say that's a Cessna doing a normal landing, man.
Mm-hmm.
But we've all been exposed to a lot of weird events, and you can't say for sure what they were. Sometimes you can, but I think it gives us all, life's a long, strange thing. It'd be a boring life. You never collected anything that was out of the ordinary. And we just try to figure out what that is. That's fundamentally the human condition. Find weird things, figure out what they mean.
One night, the invitation is open, but one night you should come out and hang out with us with our night vision, and we'll have a couple 100 people there, and just watch. And when you see things in the sky, now look. Obviously, you're going to see a lot of satellites. You're going to see a lot of things that are completely terrestrial, man-made, and explainable. But then there's the other stuff, right? That's just like, wait a minute here. What is that? And it's an epiphany when it happens. And I think that for you, for what you do, it would answer a lot of questions for you and then open up the other doors that maybe you don't want opened. Would you be ready for an epiphany like that?
I'd like to think so, but you never know on these things. But say with, I never like to count myself as a skeptic, just because so many people who call themselves skeptics these days are really just cynics in disguise. But you always approach everything with doubt, and then you try to reason your way through it. Mm-hmm. And that includes me having to reassess what your views are if it turns out that you're wrong, and it could be possible. That's science for you. We've had to change our views quite a few times over the centuries. And, then again, eyewitness observations, it's one of those things where you can't always trust your own eyes either. Sometimes you'll see something, you'll be sure that's exactly what it is, but then when you take it apart afterwards, you find out that you were tricking yourself too. So you don't know until you go out there, see it, and document and reason your way through it.
Right. And as a physicist, or I don't know if you classify yourself as physicist, you've discussed this before, but certainly you've got your degree. I want you to imagine this for a second. I'm going to be very brief, but I'm standing with 200 people on the edge of a cliff, right, at night in the desert. And off to my left, about a mile away, maybe 500 feet off of the ground, maybe 1,000 feet, about a mile away, is a giant green glowing ball. And it's traveling at a pretty good clip, and it comes out from the side of this mountain. Now, everything is on videotape. The Canadian CBC, they are there shooting a documentary, so there was multiple cameras there. Many people there as a witness. But this is what happens, Isaac. Now, wrap your mind around this. Over a 5-minute period, this thing shoots across the desert floor, right? And then slowly starts to ascend and starts to take off. I'm tracking it. I've got night vision. You can see it clearly with the naked eye. And I can see it reflecting it looks like a green chrome Christmas ornament. That's what it looks like, right? And it's reflecting, and the lasers are bouncing off of it. And it starts to ascend, and over a 5-minute period, it goes straight up from the ground, straight up, and turns into a star, stops straight up above us, and sits there. And then, now it's just a star in the sky, and then, 90-degree angle, shoots off to the left and disappears into space. Now, when I tell you something like that, that's about as phantasmical as it gets, right? It's like, wait a minute, hold on. But it happened. And I can't explain that. I do not know what I saw. I'm not saying E.T., I'm just describing you the event with the other 200 people that were there witnessing it. Now, as somebody that's trained in physics, what do you think I saw?
Oh, again, without actually seeing it, and this is one of the things, the eyeball is not a great measurement device. Something can look stationary at a great distance when it's actually just kind of finishing out its arc and starting to fall back down again. You need to get out there with instruments where you can actually measure very precisely how is this moving, how far away is it, triangulating its actual position, so that you know for sure, is this stationary or is it just moving slowly in a different direction. And then, for instance, if we looked at it and we said, right here, we can say beyond a doubt that this accelerated at 100 Gs for a moment. Then we say there's nobody on board that. It's an unmanned. Whatever it is unmanned, or maybe not human at least.
Right.
And then we could say, well, that's not a manned vessel, so assuming for the moment that it's something we made, maybe it's a drone, maybe it's a missile. And, of course, the inevitable problem with a lot of the military hardware that's secret is that it's secret because it's military hardware. We'd expect it to do weird things, because if it wasn't, they wouldn't feel that obliged to keep it secret. So what something like that could be, I can throw out all your number of thoughts about what it could be, but it's going to be the same ones everyone else has probably come up with. And I would say, that's not something I can really offer any new insight into. If you study it, you get the exacts on its trajectories, its speeds, and I mean the real exact, not the eyeball estimates people make where they say, I think that's turning too fast. Then you can actually start to say what it can and can't be in terms of its characteristics. And we can rule some stuff out from that. Like I was saying, if it's going too fast on its acceleration, we know it's not manned. Or someone's come up with some really cool way to avoid acceleration damage on people, which would be great. And the implications of what it is are different. I can't speak to the engineering on stuff like that. I'm not an aerospace engineer. But if you suddenly had a technology that allowed you to accelerate 100 Gs with a person, that has huge impact on things like military hardware, of course, but also on spaceflight. Since a lot of the devices we'd like to use to do space travel with would tend to involve very high acceleration rates, and we're a little constrained by not wanting to accelerate too fast on many occasions.
Now, I wanted to ask you this. Is there... You discuss faster than light quite a bit, and what I find fascinating with the conversations of FTL these days is that it is now part of the conversation, where it used to be the speed of light is it, nothing can go faster. That is there anything in Einstein's special relativity that said that nothing could travel faster than the speed of light?
It kind of depends on how you look at it. If you take something like the Alcubierre warp drive, for instance, we would usually say that's faster than light, but technically it's not. It's going to move you from point A to point B faster, but it's actually doing that by cutting down the space in between the points, so It's not actually exceeding light speed. Same, something like a wormhole or jumping into hyperspace, if that exists, those are getting around it. We don't think there's any way to actually move any sort of classic way faster than the speed of light, or even at the speed of light. And nothing's budged that. You have some options, things like tachyons that might be able to move faster than the speed of light too. But you've got the problem of that asymptotic limit, where as you get closer and closer, it takes more and more energy. And you've also got the problem that on the other side of that, you've got it going backwards in time. We'll say negative time or imaginary time in a case like that, and which is fine on paper. But we have this issue already where we say, if we've got fast light travel, then we have to worry about people from outside the observable universe coming to visit us too. It's not just who's in our galaxy or who's in the local volume of space.
Right.
If you throw time travel into that too, or throw in travel to other dimensions, alternate Earths, then you've got to deal with people showing up from your own future to say hello. And these are one of those things where you can't really regulate that if you're some high-tech government following the future, because you can't. You can prevent people doing it regularly, but you can't really prevent them from doing it ever. And you only ever have to do it once.
Right.
Someone goes back in time and they change history just one time. That's all it takes,
And when I hear you discuss this, it's one thing to talk about time travel at the speed of light, and clearly Einstein, documented this possibility. I understand that, and I think that we all do. That's a real form of time travel. If we could, jump on a spaceship and travel from Earth, achieve a certain speed, turn around and come back, well, we're time travelers. It's not a time machine. We're just time traveling. I get that part. But if we go full FTL and you and I are on the bridge, right, of our faster than light craft, and we cross that threshold, what happens to you and I? Do we actually reverse in age? I mean, do we become infants?
We shouldn't, and I was thinking of 2001, the old Kubrick film where that happens. But
right.
Normally, whatever you're doing has no effect on your frame of reference, where you're at. It's everybody else around you that's having the issue. So you just travel back in time. But you always want to put a caveat on that, because we only can do this on paper by assuming imaginary numbers actually exist, and they're called imaginary for a reason. So when we start, there's no experimental evidence about what happens. As to time slowing down, there's tons. It's not even something that we have to do the spaceship for. Every student in physics lab has to slow something down.
Right.
Every time we observe a muon, we can see that in practice. We slow time down on particles all the time. Every super collider does that. But we've never actually done anything where it would be going faster than or actually at the speed of light where time would stop. So we can't really say for sure what that effect is going to be. We have to kind of logic our way through it unless we get the Doctor Who or the Terminator kind of strange time logic, because it doesn't seem to really ever quite work out well when you think about it. Though there is the way around that is arguably the multiverse theory, which says that pretty much every scenario that could possibly happen is happening in another universe.
Mm-hmm.
And that your arrow of time, the pathway you're taking through time, is really more navigating back and forth between every last picture of the universe and every possible combination. And in a case like that, you wouldn't really be time traveling. But, it would feel like it. It would seem like it. It would be the exact same to you. And
well, what happens? Okay, there's two things that I need my mind clear on. If something happened at the speed of light, and I'm talking about a physical object, not a light beam, right? But a physical object, what happens to space? Does it collapse on itself? Do things dissolve? Is there something that would occur in the world of physics?
Very much does collapse on itself, actually. The universe, because that's the asymptotic limit, that's hitting infinity or zero as well.
Right.
The closer you get there, the more space in whatever direction you're traveling is shrinking.
Right.
And as you get right there at that distance, it's going to turn into a two-dimensional disk. And you would be seeing everything in front of you flattened out. People looking at you would see you flattened out, but they'd also see time stop for you. And that's another one of the problems. You can't really have an event take place at the speed of light with anything that's got matter, because there's no time being experienced to have an event occur.
Yeah, I get it. It reminds me a little bit, you can laugh, in the movie Spaceballs, right, where they go past the speed of light to ludicrous speed, then they go to plaid, right? What happens beyond that? Now, this is my second question. You and I, again, we're on the bridge, right? We're piloting. And let's say we're just in cruise mode. We're doing 100,000 miles an hour, right? We're at a decent clip, and
it's
we're
actually
cruising.
really slow.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. But then we turn on our high beams to look out in front of us, or we fire a laser out in front of our ship. Is that laser or our speed of light high beams? Is that are they now traveling faster than the speed of light because of the momentum of our ship already traveling at, say, 100,000 miles an hour?
No, and this is the thing that actually got us special relativity. Over here in Cleveland, back around the turn of last century, we had the Michelson-Morley experiments. Prior to that, we'd always assumed that anything that's moving, if I'm on a train, for instance, I always use the train analogies for special relativity, and I throw a ball, that ball is moving with my speed plus the train speed plus the speed of the Earth turning.
Right.
Light seems to move, and this is, we don't know why, right? It was the thing that caused the big problem that was solved by relativity anyway. It will move at the same speed, regardless of how fast you're going. Everyone sees the light moving at the exact same speed. And they established that, through the Michelson-Morley experiments and everything they could do. They just kept coming back to the same speed. It was weird. And so the entirety of special relativity is built around that specific fact, that light will always seem to be moving to everyone who's observing it, regardless of how fast they were going, at the same speed. So, different direction, obviously if we shoot a laser at an angle, but it's just moving at that speed. As we're getting faster, as we're getting close to the speed of light, it's going to seem to be moving away from us at that same speed, but anybody else who's looking at it is going to see it doing that too. And that's where the time dilation comes in. Now, if we actually hit the speed of light for the moment, and then we emitted a laser beam, we couldn't do that because, again, time stopped, but if we could, that light would seem to not go anywhere because we are now moving at the speed of light too. So that should be the exception where it doesn't happen. But
so what you're saying,
that speed, it would seem to get wider, though, or it would redshift away from us, but it would blue shift towards us. We caught back up with it.
Right. The blue red shift. Mm-hmm. So if you and I, again, we're on the bridge and we're approaching the speed of light, let's say we're there, and I flick on my flashlight, then the light would only come out an inch in front of it. You know what I mean? That's it. We're there. We're at the speed of light.
As we just get real close there, if we flick the thing on right before we hit, and it has just enough time to travel, a meter or so, it should seem to freeze in front of us. Now, of course, we wouldn't be able to actually see it freezing because we absorb light by seeing it hit us, but it would have frozen in place in front of us right when we hit the speed itself. But again, that's the same problem. It's one of those cases where you really should never be able to do that. So it gets a little iffy talking about what should definitely happen because it's not really a case that you could do anyway. To you, it's same as like to a laser beam. If I shoot a laser beam out and I'm on each of those photons, they come out. The photon A moving at the front, and then you got photon B right behind it. You should see photon A still in front of it the whole time. It's traveling at the same distance. They're both moving at the same speed. But you can't actually absorb anything from these because there's no time passing for them. A photon experiences no time. Anything moving the speed of light, like a neutrino probably moves the speed of light. They experience no time. Neutrinos might move just a little slower than light speed. We're never quite positive. It's real close. Or for that matter, the speed of light might be just a hair higher than light actually travels if it turned out that photons had just a little tiny amount of mass.
Right.
It's one of those things we can't eliminate the possibility. Same as we can never say if anything is completely infinite or not. If you got a rope that's infinitely long, you go by counting that by pulling on it or walking next to it. You can establish how long it is, but you can never say for sure that it's not longer until you get to the end. If it's infinite, you can never prove it's infinite. And it's kind of the same thing here. You can never prove that a photon has absolutely no mass. I think we can infer it, though. And we can never prove that it has no time at all, but we can kind of infer it. We can say it definitely doesn't have more than this amount. And so sometimes what we say is shouldn't call it the speed of light, but the speed of information, because that one we're pretty confident about.
Right.
Light just happens to be the first thing we found that moved at that speed, and it's the speed that no mass moves at, basically. If you have no mass, that's how fast you go. And the reason why that is starts getting a little complicated with Minkowski space and other things, but so we'll bypass that if you don't mind. But.
Well, when we come back after the break, I want to continue this because it's one of the most fascinating aspects of all of this, because if we are going to visit the stars and other planets, or if we are getting visited, all of these questions have to be answered and thought about. So we'll continue this. But I wanted to ask you this before the break. We've got 4 minutes. When a ship is out there, even our own, Voyager or whatever, Pioneer, our own things that we're shooting. But if we're out there traveling at these great speeds, and we encounter a small asteroid or meteorite, and wouldn't the impact at those speeds be ginormous?
Oh yeah, no, it's even at like a tenth the speed of light. Anything you hit is going off like a nuclear bomb with the same mass would.
So how do we avoid that? And I understand the laser aspects and defensive positioning and radar and scanning out, but I would think at those speeds, the calculations and the logistics would just be off the charts. But if we did make contact, it would be over.
Mm-hmm. And it's the thing about moving that quickly. It's one of the things I always say, even if you could go faster than light, you maybe wouldn't want to because you can't even get a return signal at that point.
Right.
When you're running up on things like this, like if you're going faster than light, everything in front of you looks dead white because everything's sped up so much, it's blue shifting so much, and everything behind you looks like a black hole. No light catches up to you.
Right.
Trying to actually do detection on things like that is quite tricky. Even when you're still getting up to about half the speed of light, anything you run into is like hitting an antimatter bomb. A single coffee cup is going to hit you like the Hiroshima device, right?
Right.
And you have to make sure that doesn't happen. You can absorb a particle or two, getting hit by a relativistic particle. They say if you hit a single hydrogen atom, no, not unless you're moving at a Lorentz factor of like 100, which you really have no reason to ever do. But any particle, any grain of sand is going to do a lot of damage. And so you have to be constantly scanning around for that. And considering how fast you're moving, you're talking about needing to scan an area the size of our solar system, like out to Pluto, to spot something the size of a pebble.
Right.
And that gets worse and worse the faster you go. And there are many ways you can tackle that, but it does start to say, maybe we don't want to be going that fast even if we could. Maybe a little bit slower is the wiser course of action. And so I usually tend to assume you wouldn't go much faster than about 20% of light speed unless you actually started creating a highway system through space. Not a classic one, obviously, where you're sweeping all that matter out of the way constantly. You've got sensor grids along the way that are spotting even a grain of dust and just vaporizing a thing. You clear it out. You make a hyperspace bypass or now you can start looking at traveling close to the speed of light. And you don't necessarily have to be carrying propellant with you because you could be using lasers to bounce the ships around at high speeds. That's one way you could do that. But that doesn't get you to new solar systems. That lets you get to systems that you've already colonized and back and forth between them. So same as going to the Oregon Trail. It takes you a year to get out to Oregon. Nowadays you can drive out there in a couple of days. So you always have a slow expansion front as you're exploring, but you probably can get away with traveling pretty close to the speed of light back and forth between solar systems. It's just trying to find the bestest, safest way to do it.
Yeah, I'm picturing, because when I've heard you discuss this shows you where my mind is. I was picturing interstellar highway street cleaners, right? To clear the path.
And of course, the idea would be that they wouldn't be using a classic boom, but they'd be using a laser boom. One of the things we talked about with Kessler syndrome. They sweep all the gas and dust out of the way.
But it would have to be that way, because if you're just going out there willy-nilly, space is big and it's vast, but it only takes, like you said, a little micrometeorite the size of a grain of sand at that speed would cause you a lot of trouble.
Mm-hmm. So you either want to go slow or you want to make sure you've got a really clear system in front of you. And this is something we deal with. If I'm walking around my house or on the front lawn, I don't have to worry about a little rock. If I'm driving down the freeway, that can do a lot of damage. Someone dropping out the side of a bridge or even just hitting something like a bottle on the road can cause problems.
Let's take a break right here, Isaac. Fantastic start to this evening and this conversation. Our guest tonight, Isaac Arthur. IsaacArthur.net is the website. And, of course, his YouTube channel is right there as well. It's Fade to Black. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. I'll be right back after this short break. Stay with us.
This is Fade to Black with Jimmy Church on the Game Changer Radio Network and KGRA, the Global Radio Alliance.
This is KGRA Digital Broadcasting Station, Salt Lake City, Utah, Van Buren, Arkansas. Come join us for the 2019 Conscious Life Expo in Los Angeles at the LAX Hilton. This year, we are celebrating the 50th anniversary of Chariots of the Gods with Eric Von Daniken, and I'll be hosting the panel with Eric, Linda Moulton Howe, Jason Martell, Billy Carson, and David Wilcock. Join George Norrie, Nassim Haramein, Robert Schock, Daniel Brinkley, Grant Cameron, Julia Mossbridge, Teresa Yannares, and another 50 speakers who will be presenting at the 2019 Conscious Life Expo. Just go to ConsciousLifeExpo.com for tickets and a full conference schedule, or click on the CLE banner at JimmyChurchRadio.com. Go back, Lee Tappy.
Folks, this is very important information. What's to be said about CBD? AncientLifeOil.com. Our CBD is made from hemp and has 0.003 THC, which means this wonderful product won't get you high, no matter what amount you take. What does CBD do for the body? My hands are tied. But you can Google CBD benefits and be astounded. When you're finished reading, you'll want to log on to AncientLifeOil.com. That's AncientLifeOil.com and purchase. Life is good when you feel good. People are tired of pain. People are asking for non-GMO organic products to help them with, you fill in the blank. Legal in 49 states, and again, our CBD is made from hemp. Ancient Life Oil is about helping people one by one by one. If you wonder how good the product is, the CEO takes it every day without miss. AncientLifeOil.com. That's AncientLifeOil.com. Have a great day.
Hello, I'm Julian. You're listening to my main man, Jimmy Church, on JimmyChurchRadio.com.
Hi, this is Ray Hobbs here, repping the planet, and you're listening to my good friend, Jimmy Church, Fade to Black, on the Game Changer Network and the KGRA Digital Broadcast Station.
This is Toby Kebbell. You're listening to JimmyChurchRadio.com. Don't hurt me, Jimmy. I'm only little.
Hey, I'm Adrian Grenier. And this is Ari Gold. We're the Honey Brothers. Yes. We are of the Honey Brothers. Hey, I'm Adrian Grenier.
And I'm Ari Gold.
We're the Honey Brothers.
And you're listening to Jimmy Church.
The Revolution.
Reclaim your active lifestyle with Angioprim. Angioprim is the original liquid oral chelation supplement. Chelation helps remove toxins, heavy metals, and cholesterol in your veins and arteries that can cause blockages. Scientific research proves the active ingredient in Angioprim has superior oral chelation action that helps promote cardiovascular health. Find out more. Go to angioprim.com. Talk to a trained consultant by calling Angioprim toll-free 877-882-7221.
This is Jimmy Church of Fade to Black, and you can become an official Fadernaut by just going to our membership section at JimmyChurchRadio.com.
Hey, it's Grace. Can we talk about something serious for a minute? Your age. Getting old has its perks. But remember, being a few years younger, you know, your hair was thicker, you didn't have so many wrinkles, that extra weight wasn't haunting you, and you just felt better. Well, we can't turn back the clocks and go back 10 or 15 years, but you can start feeling and looking 10 or 15 years younger with Nature's Youth RSF. It's a doctor-formulated daily supplement that helps your body maintain its peak performance and fight the aging process. Imagine sleeping better, looking better, and feeling better. See how Nature's Youth RSF has helped thousands of people just like you at nature'syouth.com. nature'syouth.com. Imagine how it will feel when your family and friends are asking you what you did to look so good. Your secret will be Nature's Youth RSF. It's time to start looking better and feeling better. Learn more and order your Nature's Youth RSF at nature'syouth.com. That's nature'syouth.com. That's nature'syouth.com.
Hello, this is Serena Wright Taylor from Conscious Life Expo, and you're listening to Fade to Black with Jimmy Church, who holds the Lucky Pony record for the best astrological chart since 1963. True story.
This is Micah Hanks of the Gralien Report, and you're listening to Jimmy Church on Fade to Black, across the globe on the Game Changer Radio Network and the one and only KGRA Radio, The Planet.
welcome back. Fade to Black. I am your host, Jimmy Church. Tonight, our guest is Isaac Arthur. He is here. Tomorrow night, Carolyn Ford, Einstein. That's tomorrow night. Wednesday night, David Wilcock is back with us to talk about 2019, and we're going to look forward. Thursday night is open lines all night long. Tonight, it's Isaac Arthur. And Isaac, this is one of the most fascinating aspects of the era that you and I live in right now, and it's the knowledge of our universe that is coming in. The data is getting out of control, and watching cosmologists and astrophysicists out there have to start to look at these harsh numbers and where things are going, like dark energy, right? That was something that was never discussed before. Now we're confronted with this and the expansion of the universe. But there's another fascinating thing for me, and that is the discovery of exoplanets. And where now in our own Milky Way, where we thought, oh, there could be a couple, maybe there's more. How unique are we? To the conversation today is our Milky Way could have 100 billion planets in it. This
probably
is
more than that.
Yeah, probably more, right? It's an extraordinary number that we never even contemplated 20 years ago, right? These are exciting times. But now let's take that data and take that knowledge and go in the opposite direction. We're talking about speed of light. And if ET is out there visiting, and I believe that they are, and they're coming at us, how do you pump the brakes on a ship that is moving at that speed? I mean, how long does it take to slow down?
Well, I think we were talking earlier about how fast something could accelerate or decelerate, and that's actually a really important one because by good coincidence, if you accelerate at 1g, normal Earth gravity for a year, you will get up to about light speed. You won't quite get there because you can never quite get there, but if you want to get up to 10% of light speed, you need to be accelerating for a month. And when you want to go down from that, it's going to take you a month too. If you're going at near the speed of light, and again, it's even going to be way worse for something like FTL, probably things like the warp drive get around that entirely. You slam the brakes very slowly. And that actually becomes the issue is if you have access to effectively infinite energy to be accelerating these ships to those kind of speeds, you still have to find some way to handle a very fast acceleration, or you're going to experience a lot of time personally. And ideally, you'd prefer not to. You might get around that with something like cryogenic sleep, but or some other type of stasis. But you have to be able to slow down. You have to be able to speed up, and it's going to take a lot of time to do that when you're going really fast. You have to re-expend that energy too. So you can't make a lot of stopovers to pick up like hitchhikers while you're on your way. You go, once you start moving, once you're up to speed, you're pretty much locked into that course until you get to your destination. Unless you have a vast amount of reserve fuel, and if you did, go faster is usually a thought. Some things like the warp drive or wormhole, if we could ever get them working, and I have to be honest, I don't think that we will. These usually get around that acceleration issue. With the wormhole, you're really not traveling through space, although the implication that it's one of those gates you just step through, like in Stargate, though not quite right. With something like the warp drive, though, you're not actually moving. You're just moving the space on either side of you. So there you don't have to decelerate at all. Though that comes with some problems, too. We think if you're heading towards a planet with one of these things on, you're very likely to, when you decelerate, blow up the system you're arriving at. So
I know. And now, okay, we need to stay on this. I'm not going to let it go. Is there resistance in space? Like, obviously we have resistance here on Earth, and you will always slow down. You need more energy to maintain a speed. Yes. Out in space, if we achieve whatever it is, right, 100,000, 200,000, 500,000 miles an hour, are we able to shut off our engines and just cruise in that direction? Or do we...
At that speed, 500,000 miles an hour, speed of light is 180,000 miles a second, so right. It's a lot faster. But at that speed, you would drift for millions of years if you'd have a noticeable drop in speed. But if you get close enough to the speed of light, you actually have to start making your ship kind of aerodynamic, because even though there's very little there, you're going so fast that you're running into it. It basically does start to create a drag effect. Now, that's only going to happen when you start getting up to like half the speed of light or closer. But you can slow down that way, too. It is one of the free ways to slow down, but it takes a long time, is just to extend a big parachute, basically, and let it drag you down. It doesn't work too well at lower speeds, though, and things like Pioneer or Voyager, those things are never going to experience, any sort of significant drag, any more than you or I do walking around the house at, a very slow speed compared to a supersonic jet. You do have that concern, and that's going to be a concern if you're doing FTL in a kind of classic Star Trek warp travel kind of way. So if you want to stay at that speed, you have to keep pushing, and it means using more and more fuel to keep up to that speed, and the faster you go, the more of that there is. And again, it's one of those reasons why you probably don't want to try to be going more about half the speed of light.
One of the things that I have talked about over and over again on this show for years and years is Arthur C. Clarke and Rama, the entire series of books. I don't know how many times I have read them, but I've always contemplated that aspect, and I always thought that Arthur C. Clarke was ahead of the curve. Maybe
I love that book.
Yeah. Maybe even an alien himself.
On the rest of the series, though. The first book, great. The second book, pretty good. Well, are
you talking about when Gentry Lee came into the picture?
Yes.
Yeah,
and nothing against Gentry Lee.
Nothing against Gentry. No, but you are correct. Okay, so anyway, is that if something was coming at us at some great speed, would we notice something? Would we be able to see something that was traveling at the speed of light or nearly at the speed of light? Would we be able to pick that up?
No. Well, if it's going, it's all about how fast it's going. If it's going at exactly the speed of light, we'll never see it till the moment it arrives.
Right.
If it's going just a little bit slower, we will get to see it, but probably not a lot. Like if something's a light hour out and it's moving at 99% of the speed of light, you're going to get maybe 30 seconds of warning time, and it's right there on you by then.
Right.
And for stellar distances, that's actually more than enough, because you've got something that's a light year out. That gives you many days of warning. And it's all about how fast they're going. If they're only going half the speed of light, then they're 12 light hours out. You're going to see them when they're 6 hours out as well. So you should always see a ship that's slowing down to get to you, especially because it's going to be, again, slowing down. But once you get into the FTL zone, you're not going to. You actually see it after it's already passed by.
Which is the way that Arthur C. Clarke has presented it in Rama, in that it was like on top of us, slowing down, right? And it would be like inside of Pluto's orbit before we would even have a clue, right? Of course, it's slowing down rapidly at that point, but that would be it. And that's a frightening thing to wrap our head around.
We always say there's no stealth in space, but again, if you're going fast enough, you don't need too much stealth, because you've got that surprise advantage. No one sees you till you're almost there.
Right.
Of course, you don't really need that if you want to militarily invade someone, because when you're going that fast, all you have to do is not slow down. You just throw your trash out before you decelerate and let it hit the planet you're heading towards. And, the Earth might only be going 30,000 miles an hour is the amount of the sun, but that stuff is still moving the speed it's going at, so it's the same as a spaceship hitting interstellar debris. You throw a ton of garbage, let's say a little ton of garbage out the front of your ship when you're going near light speed, it hits that planet in front of you, and you've already got all your weapons deployed, as it were. There's no need to do anything else. The surface of that planet on that side is just scorched. So there's
garbage.
Very little need to surprise them beyond that. When your ship arrives, it's already hit them with a preemptive strike.
Now, when you have started to put this data together, and by the way, the people that work with you, I think these concepts are fascinating, and the research is just it's unbelievable, especially for me to go through. But when we start to contemplate this, when you look at just our own galaxy, Isaac, how much intelligent life do you think could be out there? It doesn't have to be advanced, like at our level, right? Our caveman level of advancement. How much life do you think could be in our Milky Way?
I would not be too surprised if we found other life in the solar system, but not anything advanced. it would not surprise me if we found simple life just all over the place, like every place it could be. Well, it could turn out to be a lot rarer than that, too. We don't really have good models for abiogenesis yet. Intelligence, though, that's the other story. When we look at the Fermi paradox and we say that there probably isn't any, if we draw that conclusion, then it's really technological life that's higher, that's at least a century ahead of us right now that we're talking about. Where along the way the stumbling block is that really cuts the numbers down, that is a lot harder to say. We had fire 1 million years ago. We didn't start using it for pottery or metal until about 10,000 years ago. And you can look at even like during Vespasian's rule in the 2nd century Roman, 4th century of Rome, after the place burned down, he didn't want to employ certain technologies, not because he didn't trust them, but because he said, well, how am I going to feed my people if they have no jobs? You could have a civilization stutter. I think prior to about the 16th century, there's no given that technology is going to keep advancing. There isn't even now, but I'd say we're pretty much addicted to the pathway of more technology and research. We were around for 1 million years with brains decently on par with what we have now, and we really didn't make much technological progress. So it could be the entire galaxy is full up of civilizations that are Neolithic. I would tend to bet not, but I don't have any evidence that. That's just, my intuition says that intelligent life of the caveman level, for instance, is probably pretty decently rare. It might be more common than stuff at our level, but I would tend to bet it's still pretty rare.
With our sun is... we're blessed with something that's very stable.
Yes. Yeah, and that is something to always keep in mind on things like this.
Very stable. Any variance in anything with our sun, and you and I are not talking right now, right? It's really that simple, isn't it?
Well, we could probably survive. I mean, if the sun was more active, like a lot of stars in our class sonar, we're not a freak anomaly. We're just we're a bit of an outlier. If the sun got less stable, something more extreme than a Mondo minimum or the reverse where it was really fluctuating all over the place, in a case like that, we'd probably still survive now unless it was very extreme. But, a long-term effect like that could boil the atmosphere off a planet pretty easily. And stars are only ever getting hotter. They start off cooler than they are after 1 billion years or so, and they just keep getting hotter as they slowly work their way up to that subgiant and then red giant stage. And that shifts the habitable zone for a solar system. And we could have a lot of systems where it started off inhabited and then the atmosphere got stripped off and all that life went away. Not necessarily advanced life like us. We could survive a slow incremental heating of the sun right now, but obviously basic microbial life or basic mammals could not. They don't have technology. And similarly, you could have plants that got seeded later on as that sun warmed up and that warm zone, that habitable zone expanded. And something like that could be, we always talk about filters for what can get you to high advanced life. That could be one of those filters, things that end up skimming a lot of people out of the equation, is that a lot of plants are only habitable temporarily, and they are not habitable long enough for anything advanced to show up. And this is the big problem with this, is only guesswork. We have to draw logical inferences because we still have so little data. We didn't have any planets until about 20 years ago to look at, but even now with 5,000, that sounds like a lot, but there's probably 1 trillion planets out there at least. And most of those planets we found, those are the easy ones to spot. They're the really big ones or the ones really close to their sun that aren't habitable anyway. So that pool of 5,000, 6,000, however many exoplanets it is now, includes almost nothing that is actually Earth-like. Not because those planets are rare, they probably aren't, but because they're the harder ones to see. And when we have thousands of those that we can actually see decently, do some real spectroscopy on, then we might be able to start talking about the probabilities of this type of life, this level of life advancing to microbial life or to multicellular life or complex brains. Until then, we just kind of have to guess off our intuition, and that's never trustworthy, of course.
Well, and I like to look at us. What are we doing here as humans, as Earthlings? We're out there trying to figure this thing out, too, as well. We're searching for planets and what could be out there. E.T. is any alien civilization that is out there. That's the only way to look at it. They must be doing the exact same thing. But this is where I think things get complicated. You just brought it up. There could be 1 trillion planets, right? 1 trillion. That undocumented, just, you can't go and map out and figure everything, give it a name and so forth. I mean, it's just a tremendous amount. But how many of those alien civilizations know about Earth? Because we're one of 1 trillion planets, right? It's the opposite field of view, right? We're just one of 1 trillion planets. Do you see where I'm going with this? Because my next question is ancient aliens, right? How many know about us?
If we assume for the moment that technology more or less goes the direction we're thinking, and that civilization more or less goes the way that we're thinking, where we expand outward, not just to other stars, but around our own star into what we usually call a Dyson swarm. At that point in time, if you start talking about civilizations that have access to the equivalent of 1 billion planetary planets worth of living area, they should actually be able to look at every last star in the galaxy simultaneously with much greater detail than we have now, without it actually being like a major budgetary item. It would be one of those things where the local space congress only has it's like budgeting one observatory. And at that point, if they were around when light from our planet would have reached theirs, they should see us. They should know we're there. They don't have to wait to listen to our radio signals. They should have been able to scope us out by our atmosphere, for instance. And they could have been sending flyby probes to take photos. And we say, well, you might not be able to tell from the atmosphere. Radio is certainly a dead giveaway, but so something like the Great Wall or the pyramids. If somebody builds, we often talk about aliens in terms of pyramids, and a pyramid would be one of the most obvious things you could see from space. You couldn't see it from far off. I mean, you can't even see the moon landing sites from Earth and Hubble. Mm-hmm. But if you're in orbit around the planet, if you're going to fly by with a satellite, you're going to spot something like that. It sticks out like a sore thumb.
Right.
And, you can't look at a pyramid sitting on the ground and say, well, I think that's natural. They're going to know that there's something down there that's intelligent. And I'd be surprised they even had to wait that long, because they ought to be able to pick things up from like that from just things like fire. An individual bonfire is not likely to get scoped out, but you start picking out, little trace and indicators and sign. You look a little bit closer and so like, why are all these tiny little fires all over these forests? So they should already have known about us. If they themselves were around, obviously they can't discover us until they are there. But they should have known about us a long time ago already if they were there. So we shouldn't be a new thing to them per se. And, whenever we talk about them visiting us, we always have to ask, what's their motivation? It's not raw materials. Nobody's out there carving up every last asteroid and planet.
Right.
And you can even suck material out of suns. They've got way more than what we have here. So they're not interested in our raw materials. They have to be interested in what does Earth have, and it's got really interesting flora and fauna. Those are probably going to be, for all the billions of worlds out there, even if every last one of them has ecosystems, which is unlikely, those are all still going to be fairly unique. It is huge as that number is still small compared to the number of combinations. So they might be coming here to take samples. And of course, Earth culture would probably be very interesting to them too. And the funniest thing, because I was writing this up recently, is looking at a motivation to come and visit us. If you're one of those civilizations that's into the prime directive, Star Trek style zoo hypothesis thing of shielding planets off while they're primitive, that implies you find those cultures really fascinating, which means you probably have a black market in like stolen memorabilia. And if it's like any sort of regulatory effort we do, you've probably got people breaking those rules, sneaking in.
That is fascinating.
It would be funny if you might be raiding someone to steal their comic book collection.
That is fascinating. That is fascinating. Hey, I've got a first printing of Rama by Arthur C. Clarke. No way. Yeah, that's a pretty interesting way to look at it. And the other, if we flip this, what would make Earth unique? There's all the gold in the universe out there that, water, well, hydrogen is not an issue in the universe.
Oxygen's the third most common material after hydrogen and helium. They are quasars that pump out entire planetary masses of water from their shells.
That's right. So what would make us unique? Well, we got good weed. We've got a great atmosphere. It's certainly climate-wise, it would be a good place to hang out. But I think you're right. Just coming by and getting samples and going out and growing your own plants or things that would be unique here is something to travel to Earth for. Hence visitation and probes and so forth. Not necessarily to take over the planet or to conquer us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, and the more important they place a value on that sort of thing, the individual uniqueness of life or culture, the more likely they are to want to shield that from outside influence for a while, and the more you have a motivation for people to want to sneak in and do that.
Right.
And so, we always try to look, I'm not saying that's what's happening, of course, but you always want to look at what the motivations are and what they would do if that was the case. And, if I was trying to abduct people to get DNA samples, they could have got those DNA samples a long time ago. We haven't changed that much. And they could also just, abduct a mailbox instead. There's, 1,000 letters by people who have touched those. That's all the DNA you need.
Right. And when we come back, we're going to take a break, but I do want to talk about the whole Independence Day aspect of this. Of an invasion is something that does need to be discussed, and you do it really, really well. So when we come back, we're going to do that. And also, I encourage everybody out there, if you haven't visited Isaac's YouTube channel, start with the Fermi Paradox Compendium. But then after you do that, go straight to Stupid Aliens, because that is one of the best presentations I've ever heard to silence a lot of people, including myself. So let's take a break right here, Isaac, and when we come back, we'll pick up where we left off. But we've got to go to why haven't we been invaded? It's one of the best conversations that one can have with Isaac Arthur, and we're going to do that next. Stay with us. This is Fade to Black.
Way out here, we listen to Jimmy Church.
You're listening to Fade to Black.
Always on the edge of the hottest alternative talk. Jimmy Church with Fade to Black. KGRARadio.com.
¿Qué tal, mis amigos? Yo soy Mario Carson, el tiburón, y los invito para que escuchen a mi buen amigo Jimmy Church Radio. ¡Claro que sí!
Hurricanes, earthquakes, wildfires. This year we've experienced more than our fair share. This is Jimmy Church of Fade to Black, and last month I decided to make sure my family does not have to worry about food should we get caught in a real emergency situation. Introducing Numana, a healthy, storable product that tastes so good that you'll want to eat it every day instead of just during those times of duress. All Numana products have a 25-year shelf life, are MSG and GMO-free, no preservatives, and are made in America. With the Numana pack in your home, you'll be able to sleep at night knowing that you've protected your family. Not only have I tasted and tested, I own it. Now you can too. Just click on the Numana banner on JimmyChurchRadio.com and use the promo code Jimmy when you order. In addition to a discount, we'll send you an autographed Fade to Black t-shirt. Seriously. Go Beckley Tappy. Do you want to be an official Fadernaut? Of course you do. This is Jimmy Church of Fade to Black. Just go to our membership section at JimmyChurchRadio.com.
So, you love talk radio? Then you'll love TalkStreamLive.com. TalkStream Live is always on, 24/7 with the best streaming talk shows. Find your favorite talkers and discover some new ones. It's free, readily available online or on mobile with any smartphone or tablet. Finding your favorite talk shows all in one place has gotten a whole lot easier. Just go to TalkStreamLive.com. Be sure to download the free apps from Google Play or the iTunes App Store.
You listen to us, and we listen to you. And So does the CIA. KGRARadio.com.
If you have hard water, the lime scale not only leaves white spots, it clogs pipes and breaks down appliances, costing you hundreds of dollars in energy and wear. Eliminate lime scale and other water issues like brown staining and bad odors with HydroCare water products available from Wave Home Solutions. Wave's affordable water systems don't use salts or chemicals. You'll love the way your water tastes, smells, and looks. Satisfaction guaranteed. For more information, go to bestwater123.com. That's bestwater123.com.
Are you intrigued by Paranormal Talk Radio? You'll love the new Paranormal Radio app from TalkStream Live. You'll find a great selection of talk shows covering UFOs, ghosts, strange phenomena, and much more. Download the Paranormal Radio app now and start listening to the very best in paranormal talk entertainment, including the network you're listening to right now, the Paranormal Radio app. Free in Google Play and the iOS App Store.
You are listening to Fade to Black with Jimmy Church on the Game Changer Network.
Oi, oi, I'm Reese Evans. You're listening to Jimmy Church. This is Revolution. The revolution will not be televised. The revolution is on radio. Ciao.
Welcome back, Fade to Black. I am your host, Jimmy Church. You can follow me on Twitter at JChurchRadio. You can follow Isaac at Isaac Arthur. You know what? Let me jump in really quick. Isaac, is it Isaac A. Arthur on Twitter?
I think it is Isaac A. Arthur on Twitter. I use whichever ones are free at the time when you're logging into those things. There's usually some other Isaac. Let me double check. Yeah, it is Isaac A. Arthur _ between the A's.
There you go. Hey, there's a lot of other Isaac Arthurs out there. You need the A in the middle to separate you from the imposters. It's a good
I was surprised there actually are some ones. There's another Isaac Arthur. He actually looks a little bit like me, does craft design bios on YouTube, and they're actually good videos.
That's a good guy to get to know right there. I've
always meant to look him up at some point, yeah.
That's a show sponsor if I've ever heard one. So, look, that's the big question that we started to touch upon right before the break is if our galaxy and the universe is teeming with life and there's advanced civilizations out there, 10,000, a billion years, a million years more advanced than us, then they must be having our eye on planet Earth. Why haven't they invaded and enslaved us? Well, okay, I pose two things. One, they would be enlightened beings and have moved past, death. But then there's the other side that maybe they're just not interested and there's nothing here for them to enslave and get a benefit from. But that's the question. Why haven't we been taken over?
Well, I mean, we've got different ways we can look at it. I tend to assume that the reason we haven't been is because nobody is out there able to do it yet. But if they were, we hear this, they wouldn't be interested in us. They'd be so far beyond us. And that one never holds water to me. I could imagine there'd be a lot of people out there who didn't find us interesting, but there are people who devote their entire lives to studying plants or insects. Right? Why wouldn't they? Certainly if we could talk to them, we would. Everybody talks to their cats and dogs. So I don't like the idea that they're just going to find us boring. As people visit Kansas and Oklahoma all the time, in spite of them being proverbially boring. Mm-hmm. Now, that they would have invaded us, that one's actually a little bit easier to cover because the first thing is if we're out there and they're out there, either we're the first species they ever met and they're going to be kind of curious about us, or they're all over the place. And if they're all over the place, then you have to say, well, if they invade us, what is everybody else doing? we're not going to have some close neighbor who's the only one who's there. Either it's just us or it's just us and them, and we are a bit of a puzzle that they were kind of interested in because it's the first alien life they've ever met either. Or there's species all over the place, some of which are probably really old and powerful and might take offense if somebody just starts blowing up other people's planets or enslaving people. But then, of course, there's the other motive is, what is the actual motive to invade? To study, sure, I can see that one easy enough, but they don't need us for slave labor. They've almost got to have better robots than we do now, and we don't need it anymore either. One of the biggest problems about getting rid of slavery in the 19th century was that many places were still dependent on basically forced labor, and it got a lot easier to ban that as we got better automation. What value do we have as labor or as slaves? We really don't have any. And they're not going to want to grow us for food because they could clone us, and presumably they don't actually have to kill people to get meat from them. So there's not an obvious motivation to invade us, to take us over in the classic sense of the word. And that's just potentially causing them problems. Why don't most countries invade places nowadays? The climate, the situation doesn't really make that viable either to do it or to want to do it. And that's very technology based. Every culture, every race is going to be a lot different in their outlook. So you might have some that were fine with that. But if we assume on the mediocrity principle that we were fairly normal, and we kind of have to make that assumption because we only got one case to look at, then you'd kind of guess there'd be people who would be very offended by that, who might, take militant issue to somebody going around invading planets. And again, there's no real motivation to do it for any sort of obvious benefits. But again, they're all collectors and they want to steal all comic books example, they might have people staking claims to it because they want those cultural artifacts. And so it would be kind of amusing. You could have a hidden invasion where some, nation out there, some space nation, invaded a planet, seizes their own, violently protects it from other people coming by, and steals away Wikipedia or the best 100 films, whatever, to sell on the market, as it were. And so it kind of depends, what do we mean by an invasion? The classic military invasion, your Independence Day scenarios, those don't really work. And of course, they also be very short too. You're just not going to win if they decide to invade that way and they just want us all dead. Because you don't have to land a fleet to kill everybody. You just, as we say, you don't even have to stop at the planet. You just dump your trash out before you arrive, and it's going to ram the planet and kill everybody.
But so now this is where, for me, I look at us, and I think that we're growing up, Isaac. We're maturing. In fact, you just mentioned that in a strange way about invading another country. Even that is less and less likely as the days move forward for a lot of different reasons. But another reason is that we are maturing. Hopefully one day we won't have guns. But an intelligent civilization out there would develop in the same direction and maybe would have to move away from a warring a faction that is out there trying to conquer, because there are other civilizations out there too as well that they're in communication with, I would think, and that this is the way of the universe and the way of the galaxy, and that battling and killing isn't part of an enlightened civilization.
I mean, I think that's probably, well, it's certainly what I'd like to be true, is that, as species get more technology, they get more mature and ethical. But, you really can't take that too much for a given, because their idea of what's ethical and our idea, I mean, you go back and read a book from the beginning of the 20th century. I was thinking about H.P. Lovecraft. Love his work, one of the first guys to really explore the idea of a vast and huge universe. But the man was a racist through and through, and a lot of people from that era were. And somebody writing in the 22nd century might tend to think we're all barbarians too. And they might have a completely different scale for how they evaluate that. You try to predict future ethics, it's usually not going to go over too successfully. So we could have aliens out there who hold views that we just find absolutely loathsome. I think, though, that you do tend to probably have to go away from overt violence, mass scale destruction, just because it's so much easier to blow things up than to make them, and any technological civilization is going to have had to confront that problem. So regardless of whether or not they have to be very warlike or not, they probably don't blow stuff up a lot, just because that's not going to be the most effective way from their perspective to go about, winning things. It's too much of an exchange of, nukes everywhere, or antimatter devices, or, scorching a laser from another solar system with a Nike Dyson beam. That sort of practice is much too much of a scorched earth, literally, policy. And so hopefully we don't see that much of that sort of behavior in the future from us or them or whoever. But we can't really rule it out either. There could be species out there that are just openly genocidal.
This is the 50th anniversary of Chariots of the Gods, and it's hard for me to wrap my head around that it's been 50 years, but it has. This is 2019. Mm-hmm. And the impact that Eric had on popular culture and the concept of this, which you brought up H.P. Lovecraft, he certainly wrote about this, these theories 100 years ago. But that's where we are today. How much visitation do you think has happened in the past, and even the distant past, on this planet?
Well, I mean, again, my stated view on it is that there's probably no other intelligent species in our galaxy yet, so I would guess none. But if there's anybody out there who's doing it, then I would guess tons. It's just, we'd say one of the issues with the Fermi paradox is not that people would want to visit Earth. It's that they are so likely to want to visit Earth that it's almost unbelievable that we wouldn't see them all the time. And, of course, many people feel that we do. But if they're out there, I would take it as almost a given that they have been here so many times it's ridiculous. And again, from my perspective, that means they're probably not out there. But if they are, I just can't imagine why they wouldn't have swung by. Not because they'd be obsessed with Earth, but when you're talking about massive civilizations of who knows how many quintillions of members, somebody is going to have written their entire thesis on Earth. Even if almost nobody even knows what the planet exists.
Right.
You specialized societies, you're going to have people who are all about Earth, who probably know more about Earth than we do, and they've made it their entire life career. But you'll have fan clubs that might outnumber our entire population.
Right.
And just because their civilizations are so huge that even though it's a tiny portion that's interested, it's still a huge number.
Yeah, just like the Japanese and the French know more about the blues here in the United States than we do that live here. That's a fascinating way to look at it. And then you discuss in depth many times about coming here. If your focus was on planet Earth, you would spend so much time getting here that you would know everything about the Earth, our languages, and everything about us before you even arrived. And so you would have an ability to communicate, and you would know how to build a hybrid human to represent us here on Earth too as well, so we wouldn't freak out.
Or an android, or you have the options there. Now, it might be really hard to mimic human behavior. So much of what we do is something we've learned our whole life, and our brains are wired for a lot of it. But they should be able to cobble together something. Now, they might not be able to do something that would pass for human before they actually landed and took samples, but almost as soon as they're out there and exposed to it, they should be able to replicate something like that if they even need to. We often say they're surveilling us. Well, we mentioned abducting a mailbox earlier. Why not infiltrate an Amazon warehouse in the middle of the night and put surveillance tracking gear in every last random package? And that becomes your data pool, and that's a very big one. And if you can't mimic them after that, then you probably just can't do it, period, so you'd be stuck just observing. But it really shouldn't be a problem. We know how to surveil. We don't really do a lot of messing around with the few uncontacted tribes we have, but we could surveil them so they wouldn't know it was us, I would not expect us to notice if they were doing it with the intention of being secret. But they should have a huge data pool on us, and they have access to all of our information nowadays because we have the internet. But they have to get down here to access that. But they shouldn't have any problem doing that either. You land some random place, send out some human-looking androids to go set up a server farm or a download center, and now you've got all that information.
With fast radio bursts, which are, if you're a cosmologist these days or an astrophysicist or an astronomer, fast radio bursts are the trend right now to go out and find these things along with exoplanets. The window of our technology here, we've had radio waves emitting from this planet for about 100 years, but it's now very little of what we do. Right, everything is wired now. Our communication is wired. We still have radio waves, but we are quickly moving away from it as we advance as a civilization. And maybe in 100 years there'll be zero radio waves being emitted from here.
That is one that I always have to put a caveat on, is because, and it depends on what you use to transmit. If they got something FTL, then they probably use that. But it's hard to read all signals nowadays because they tend to be digitally compressed. But the one thing you're least likely to compress, and that you want to make loudest too, is something like your GPS system or your time and date system.
Right.
And it would not be, to me, all that weird for a civilization, even one that's been around a very long time and has better methods, to have some really loud beacon in the radio spectrum that just shouted, not hello, nice to meet you, but the time is 12:22 p.m. over and over again, because that's how you get your navigational fix, and that would be more accurate than using a neutron star, for instance. So some galactic GPS would, probably be kicking around. And once it's out there, you don't care if it's moving slow, because you actually want people to be able to calculate off of how fast it's going. So they might have something better and be using that. But just because you have something better doesn't necessarily mean you stop using the old system either. We still do snail mail, even though we have email, and a lot of our mediums, as we advance new ones, they always say, oh, it's going to kill off this. Video killed the radio star. Well, what are we doing right now? That was 40 years ago.
But that's exactly right. And so the fast radio bursts that we are picking up now, if they were signals from an ancient civilization, what segment of their development are we detecting here, right?
Yeah, it would have to be pretty decently far ahead, though, because you're playing out an entire sun to try to make it bulk out radio signals. That's a lot of manpower and resources to be thrown. Not necessarily high tech. It's just it's like the Great Wall of China. It's a project you do with a lot of people. It's not hard. It's just big. So.
Well, and by the time that we detect it, are they still there?
I hope so. I mean, they will have changed. If you're looking at a fast radio burst from 10,000 light years away, 10,000 years ago, I mean, we were a fairly advanced civilization already 10,000 years ago, but nothing like we are now. And they will have changed a lot, and hopefully they would still be around. That's one of those other Fermi paradox solutions, is that life is common, but it kills itself off a lot. And I think once you actually get up into space, that becomes fairly unlikely, just because it's like trying to exterminate a virus. You can get the host easily enough. You go blow up the planet as well, kill the person who's got it, but it's already gone and spread other places by then. And since we're intelligent, we'll know what not to do over again. So I think once we're off Earth with something that's actually a sustainable colony on like the Moon or Mars, we can probably rule out that civilizations blow themselves up a lot, or rather, they exterminate themselves that way. I imagine they probably do blow themselves up a lot, but not fatally so.
And with this distance, the vast distances that we are talking about here, the ships that would be used, I want to talk about the generational craft, because that's exactly what Arthur C. Clarke presented too as well in Rama. Your presentation is spot on. But what about the flip side of that, which, like, if we go to Dune, for instance, where now we are folding space and we're not actually traveling these vast distances, but we have figured out a way to close that gap and make space travel instantaneous.
That actually changes your colonization profile completely. Frank Herbert was never entirely consistent about the setting, but I think at one point he mentioned that he wasn't even sure if the planets were in the same universe, so there might be parallel realities. If you can just forward space to a location and it doesn't matter how far away it is, you don't expand outward as a loose sphere. You might have your second colony in a different galaxy. You just go for the lowest hanging fruit. Same applies for if you're going to copy clones of Earth that are uninhabited in alternate realities. Your empire might sprawl all over the place, and because it's closer to get to the surface of another planet as it were than to fly the closest star.
Right.
And Dune being a great example of that. We don't really know what the empire looks like there, though I think they do eventually say it's a galactic empire, which is something I never liked when they revised that. And two trading planets that are close partners might actually be on the other side of the galaxy with millions of other planets in between that were inhabited, just because that's how the trade routes went. And then that's probably not possible. I don't think we're ever going to figure out a way to travel faster than light. But if we do, the method for how you do it is going to dominate how you actually go about traveling through space. The Alcubierre warp drive, for instance, its maximum speed is I think millions of light years a second on paper. So you are traveling to the other side of the galaxy almost instantly, and you're traveling to other galaxies very easily. And so distance no longer has any effect. You colonize by whichever ones are the easiest ones to colonize.
And when we look at the original UFO hypothesis, which is a nuts and bolts, physical craft traveling these great distances. And I've always had problems with, a little flying saucer with a little ET in it. Where do they sleep? Where's the food? Yeah. And traveling. Unless they came from a bigger ship, number one, that we didn't see. But the other thing is, because it's easy. They've got something else figured out here that we don't have any concept of, and it's way beyond our imagination. That it's just, quite frankly, easy to travel these great distances.
Nobody would imagine, 1,000 years ago that if you want to do a visit to L.A. or to New York City, that you would just get in a car and drive there after an afternoon or an evening on the road, or hop on an airplane and do it. If you got a big mothership, it's probably not landing on the planet. That's just a lot of dissipation of heat, and it's obviously not very covert. And so you probably would then send down small shuttles. And those could be very compact because they really only need to have room for the person in them. They probably have very good automation that could build anything they really needed while they were down on the ground. Some very high-tech form of 3D printing. So they wouldn't necessarily be big spaceships at all. Indeed, a space probe might be something the size of a paperback that's just full of compressed machinery that's going to come out and make copies of itself, following the blueprint to set up some big observatory or whichever it chooses to do.
Right.
And, you can hide those, too. You might say, well, it's building probes on the planet, but it might be building them just underneath the ground as some kind of, vague, thin network you can't even see. And we don't know how that FTL travel would work if it did. We can talk about if it doesn't, but if it did, they might not need spaceships because, and I think Peter Hamilton did this in his Combo saga, they travel between planets, but they just do it from ground to ground. Same as in Stargate. They set up a train that runs through a wormhole on the surface of two planets, no ships involved.
Exactly. And I've always thought that if we, us, are going to go out and discover, well, we're not going to do it with us being on board, you and I, Isaac. We're going to have probes. And now, and you've brought up 3D printing in so many of your presentations, that now it's an easier concept in that you would build as you go. You would build the probes as you go. You would go out, you could go and figure out the entire galaxy very quickly by building as you go, and that's how the exploration would happen, and log each planet and solar system as you went by 3D printing and building as you come across the resources.
Mm-hmm. And it doesn't take all that much. I mean, we don't know that every solar system is going to have a big planet around it, but how much material do you need to build a few more probes to each stop?
Right.
And, you can pack a lot into a probe. There is a minimum size you can make a spaceship because of all the radiation collision issues. That doesn't let you send out something, even if you can store entire consciousnesses on something the size of an atom. You can't build a spaceship that small. It needs to be a decently big. We're talking at least the size of an SUV, right? That's still nothing for matter. Any one random asteroid, not even one of the big ones with names, has enough material in it to build such probes to go to every single solar system in the galaxy. So you don't really have to invest a lot of mass. Even if you decide you want to conserve mass, then at the next stop they build more. But those probes don't have to be too simple either. As an example, let's say I had scanned copies of a research team, the same research team on every probe too, 100 or so people who are experts at everything. And when a probe arrives, it finds anything interesting, it builds an android body for that export and uploads that mind available to that android, and bam, you got your export there on site. They don't have to travel to make the additional trip.
Right.
And they just send the information home.
And that's it. And they're constantly logging. That's it, just logging. And one of the aspects of when you watch like Star Trek, especially the original series, or you know what, Orville is really good, by the way. I don't know if you've checked that. It's really good.
The first couple episodes I didn't like it, then I rewatched it and it was great.
It's
the
great.
Same thing about Lost in Space too. I didn't like the reboot first few episodes, and it grew on me. So.
I can't wait for the second season of Lost in Space. It's going to be great. But there's one thing that they point out over and over again that we lose sight of. They are discovering planets and stars that weren't logged before or weren't named. And that would have to be the way that it is if we're dealing with literally trillions, right? Mm-hmm. It's just that's all you are out there doing is discovering new systems.
Yeah, no, and I mean, we might be able to discover almost all of them here. We have something called the Zone of Avoidance, which sounds much cooler than it is. It's the chunk of the galaxy we can't see because the center of the galaxy is in the way. The second zone of avoidance, the other one is the one right underneath our feet from the Earth. We are going to have to get out there and take a quick look at a lot of these places much closer up. They say, well, you could build a big enough telescope, and you can build some monstrous telescopes in space. I mean, planet-sized, thin ones if you want to. Mm-hmm. But it's still going to be so much easier to send something out there. As we're saying with like the moon landings, for instance, Hubble cannot see the moon landing sites as anything more than one blurry pixel. And that's our best telescope. Well, not anymore, but it's one of our best telescopes, and the moon is really, really close. If you want to get good data on these places, you're going to need to send a ship out there. And it's either going to be flying by at near relativistic speed with just enough time to take one photo, as it were, or it's going to have to stop, slow down, and look at the place. And if you've got a probe that's actually stopped and slowed down, and that's been designed to repair itself and is nice and high-tech, you'd kind of expect it to go ahead and do some kind of landing and produce more probes on the spot to take closer looks. And again, if it's borderline artificial intelligence, why not send along scouting teams that way too? But these automated probes don't really get there any faster than you or I will. They have an advantage on acceleration, basically. They get the same top speed. So you might just send regular people on a colony ship. It's not that hard to build one with that kind of technology. If you've got that tech, you can send normal people too. So you could easily have huge exploration missions that went and visited these systems and colonized them if they were so inclined to. And you're not going to have a civilization really anymore that's a single civilization, but same as the hunter-gatherers spreading from Asia to North America weren't a single civilization. They will get spread out there, and they'll mutate and diverge. We don't say with aliens if they don't exist yet. Wait a million years and they will. They might have originated from Earth, but they'll still be alien to us. Because that's a lot of divergence, even without throwing in, artificial routes like cybernetics or genetic engineering. So this is just the question is, are we the first ones there? And is everyone, if not, going to act the same way we would or close enough that we can predict their behavior? But there's so many planets out there. And that's just our galaxy. We're not limited to our galaxy. The universe does not stop there. And you can keep going after that. There are stars between the galaxies even.
When you look at the original, we've got 30 seconds. I'll just make a quick comment. When you look at the original Hubble shots, which are just a little tiny little piece of everything. And you blow that up, and everything that we thought were stars are galaxies and galaxy clusters. Infinite, right? It's just a crazy.
And it might actually be infinite, too.
It might
we can
be
only
infinite.
see a certain distance. There's nothing to indicate the universe ends at that area. It might be infinite in size.
It's crazy when you think about that, because each one is 100 billion, 200 billion. The numbers, and those are what's inside of each galaxy. And then there are literally hundreds of billions, maybe even a trillion or an infinite amount of galaxies. It blows my mind. Absolutely blows my mind. Let's take a break.
Space is really big.
It's really big. Our guest tonight, Isaac Arthur. When we come back, we're going to continue the conversation, but I want to talk a little sci-fi, and we're going to do that next, and gaming. There's a method to my madness. Stay with us.
Hi everybody, this is Rob Halford, the Metal Guard on JimmyChurchRadio.com.
This is KGRA Digital Broadcasting Station, Salt Lake City, Utah, Van Buren, Arkansas.
Poor water quality is a major health issue, and it's only getting worse. Municipalities can't keep up, standards have dropped, and pollutants are increasing. Where does it all end? It ends by keeping the pollutants outside of your home with HydroCare's advanced systems available at Wave Home Solutions. No less than the best purification materials and processes have been developed by HydroCare to provide you with healthy, clean water for drinking, cooking, and showering. HydroCare far surpasses the competition in removing chlorine, odors, iron, lead, chemicals, limescale, and much more. Don't settle for less when it comes to your water. We'll take care of the toughest water problems for you, whether it's from a city or well source. Satisfaction guaranteed. For more information, call 888-997-WAVE. That's 888-997-WAVE. Or go to bestwater123.com. That's bestwater123.com.
Wave Home Solutions for a healthy, comfortable home.
Your contact for current news and trending topics. KGRARadio.com.
Does your basement or crawl space have a damp, musty smell? Well, watch out. That's a sign of too much moisture and not enough ventilation. And that can mean increased mold growth and the buildup of harmful toxins and gases. Don't bother with a dehumidifier. It just circulates the same unhealthy air. Now there's a better way to remove these dangers and odors. It's with the computerized Wave Moisture Control Unit that reduces moisture and expels pollutants.
We replaced our old dehumidifier with the Wave unit, and in only 3 weeks, our basement is dry and the musty smell is gone.
Wave units require no maintenance, no buckets of water or filters, and costs only pennies a day to run. Breathe better, live healthier with an affordable, no-maintenance Wave unit. Call 888-717-WAVE, 888-717-WAVE, or visit dryhealthyhome.com. Dryhealthyhome.com.
Ride the wave. Wave Home Solutions for a healthy, comfortable home.
This is Jimmy Church of Fade to Black, and I only drink Fade to Black blend coffee from River Moon. Just click on the River Moon coffee banner at jimmychurchradio.com. Promo code F2B Blend.
So are you tired of being tired? Well, then it's time to get the tea. Hey, it's Lisa here to tell you about this all-natural, all-organic tea I've been drinking that has had great results for over 20 years. It's called Life Change Tea, and it's specially formulated to help detoxify and cleanse your kidneys, liver, colon, and blood all at once. The colon is one of the most ignored organs in the human body. The faster that waste is eliminated from the body, the less time that waste sits in our intestines, spreading toxins to our bloodstream. This tea helps cleanse chemicals caused by outside intruders from our entire digestive system. And get this, weight loss can be a side effect. And with continued use of the tea, you can experience clearer, healthier, younger looking skin, increased energy, and a happier outlook on life. So if you're tired of being tired, get the Life Change Tea at getthetea.com. That's getthetea.com. And like me, you'll be glad you did.
Did you know that when you're on the road with limited data or Wi-Fi available, you can still listen to every minute of Fade to Black by just calling 605-562-4482. No smartphone, app, or internet needed.
It saves your data plan and no extra cost if you have unlimited minutes. Just call 605-562-4482. You can listen to me, Jimmy Church, on any phone, anytime, anywhere. Go Beckley Tappy.
You want to know a secret? I love ponies. I really love ponies. I'm serious. I couldn't stay sane without ponies to brush.
Why fade to black? Because you never got that pony, damn
it. This is Fade to Black with Jimmy Church on the Game Changer Radio Network and KGRA, the Global Radio Alliance.
All right, welcome back. Fade to Black. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Tonight, Isaac Arthur is here. Been waiting for this conversation for a very long time, and I'm a little overwhelmed. I need to ground myself again, and I'm going to do it with this, Isaac. This is where my mind loses itself with all of these concepts, and it's this. It's the concept of the hive mind. And I'm going to take it a step further. The sci-fi, science fiction community, the gaming community, dwarfs our ufology conspiracy community. And each week I speak to literally millions in our community. And what is out there beyond our community that doesn't even know about Coast to Coast AM or Fade to Black, right? They don't know. But the conversations of alien tech and the complexities of all of this to get a book written or to get a game done, all of these concepts are considered. And the question of alien life and how they get here or how we would travel to the stars and this technology is all encapsulated in these concepts and ideas. And I believe that it's a hive mind concept, that alien life out there is an accepted reality, and everybody studies this, and it reflects back into your work as well.
Well, I think we always say with a hive mind, you say, could we have a hive mind one day? And say, well, we've had a hive mind for quite some time. The basic concept behind human intelligence is that we specialize and we network. And then when we invented writing, we certainly could include in our hive mind dead people as well. They become part of the mixture. Someone doesn't have to be there anymore to speak to us. They could be on another continent. They could be dead for a century. We get these, that's basically, we call that, communities right from the get-go. But that's kind of how that can advance, and to what degree it would is certainly going to depend on the individual. We were talking gaming. It's to me, gaming is still pen and paper, Dungeons and Dragons with the dice. But I guess these days it means more video games. The science fiction, the gaming community, fantasy or sci-fi, is where so many of these ideas do actually end up getting explored. So a lot of times with the channel, we always like to, we say the science inspires the science fiction and the art, which come back and inspire people to go into the sciences and to support the sciences. And it's a constant feedback loop.
It is. And I believe it's the hive mind. And we don't even know, we talk about the hive mind, but it is actually happening constantly.
Yeah, it just depends on the method for doing it. I mean, Arthur C. Clarke, of course, and a lot of the sci-fi writers in the 50s, 60s, and 70s were really into telepathy. That's kind of gone away from it in science fiction these days, I think, because we can see it emerging as more of the technological telepathy, where you can connect to people instantly. The bandwidth we use for that right now is speech and audio and text, but that's likely to mutate into something much more direct and high bandwidth in the future. And where that stops, where that goes, there are so many different options, and it's not which one will happen, but more likely all of them would happen. You might have big classic sci-fi hive minds like the Borg, or you might just have communities where people are very used to being able to talk to each other from the other side of the planet instantly. We just don't know how that's going to happen, but you do get such great communities popping up nowadays because of that early hive mind aspect. I don't have to find that one person in my town who shares my hobbies anymore. I can find the 10,000 people on the planet who share my one really bizarre hobby that only 1 million people enjoy, and or my one interest. And that's only going to keep getting easier and better as time goes on.
What do we do when we talk about this concept of the hive mind and also start to incorporate our other scientific realities today, which is quantum computing, entanglement? You brought up tachyons earlier, and instant reactions at the atomic level. Instant, not faster than the speed of light, but faster than that. Instant across vast, infinite distances. Could there be communication that is happening with an alien civilization here in the now that we don't even realize that it's coming from another galaxy?
Possibly. Spooky action at a distance. And we don't know that it's necessarily instantaneous, just that it's faster than light. It's always hard to prove something is zero or infinity, as it were. The problem with the quantum entanglement or spooky action at a distance is while that does happen faster than light, as best as we can tell, the only information that sends is basically the single bit of up or down. And you can't predict it, what it's going to come out as. You can observe it, but you can't predict it, which makes it really hard, and no one's really thought of a method yet to actually send information that way. Somebody might figure out how to do it down the road, but at the moment, it doesn't look like we can use that for communication. If you can, though, all of a sudden you've got a galactic internet because you've got galactic speed travel. And even if you don't have the spaceships do it, you can start sending people around as just digitally compressed data. Although that's going to take a huge amount of bandwidth, and we don't know what the bandwidth on something like that would be. But even if it was just basic text, like a old school, 1 kilobyte per second modem,
right,
that changes the game an awful lot. And even if it's not instantaneous, but just much faster than light, it's a game changer on how we would expect civilizations to roll out and how they go about absorbing things. You do not need a very big sensor or probe on a planet, for instance, if you can relay instantaneously back and forth to central command what you want that probe to look at and do.
I want to discuss teleportation, and you know what, your take on it is daunting. It kind of bummed me out, actually, but that
happens sometimes. They always say the channel's very optimistic. But
I know.
Spoil things for people sometimes too.
So we're going to get to teleportation, but the phenomena of people on this planet, of which there are millions, that are channeling something. When you hear about this, and I know that you've heard enough about channeling different species or Pleiadians or Zeta Reticuli, right? And they're channeling an ET presence, and they're conveying that information back to us here on Earth, and they've got a message for us. Ultimately, what do you think is going on? Is it the possibility of some type of entanglement and communication that ET has figured out, and we are just, bumping into the radio signals, if you were? But what do you think is happening with that? Too many people are doing it for it to be insanity, right? A mental issue.
Well, and, this is the thing on stuff like that is say, well, you can't accuse everybody of being wrong or being a liar. And, of course, I would imagine some people do lie about it. There's always some folks who would. But there are people who lied about going to California. I still believe California exists.
Right.
But it doesn't necessarily mean they're right or they got the idea right, too. And I don't think they'd claim that either. I mean, this is a mysterious thing that's going on to them, so they don't know how it works. They just think that it does. There's a lot of holes that one would have to plug for that to make sense as a concept. If we don't know how the FTL thing is working, that someone's using to communicate, we can't say how it would actually manifest. But you would expect in a case like that if you're talking to someone far away, they would, if they're sending an intentional message, want that message to be believed. So, if I was trying to talk to a civilization like ours from, the 25th century or whatever, I'd probably be sending them stuff that they could not possibly, that they could verify. And I have a really easy way to do that if I'm far away, because I'm back in time to them, right? Mm-hmm. They are going to be able to look at a phenomena that I saw earlier, that the light hasn't reached us yet for them, and say, oh, so if I predict a supernova that I've already seen, but they won't see for another decade, I can say, Look at the sky on, October 12th, 2021. There will be a supernova. When that happens, that you've pretty much proven that beyond any reasonable doubt, especially if you're doing this multiple times. Or if you send information, this is how you build a fusion reactor. But even just those observations, you can tell them, this signal will arrive at this point in time. This star will do this at this point in time. This one will flare at this point in time. And you will see them at these times. We already saw them, The light hasn't reached you yet. That is such a dead, perfect proof of what's going on that nobody's going to, argue with that. And so, and again, that's where it kind of comes back to the skeptic thing is that's how I do it. That doesn't necessarily mean that they do it that way, but they would do something along those lines. If I can think of a way to do that off the top of my head, they can probably think of a better one. But they can use that one. Why aren't they?
Yeah, it wouldn't be if the Yankees won the world. Right. It wouldn't be if the Yankees won the World Series in 20. They wouldn't have that information, but they would have something that would be from the heavens, interstellar.
Yeah. Something we could see that the light got to us a little bit later. They know we're going to see it at this time. And they just tell us to look out for it, And that's how you would go about proving something like that. And so it goes to motivations, assuming they exist to have motivations. What is their goal? Why are they doing this? And if they were using those motivations, what method would they use? If they want us to know something, if they were intentionally sending us messages, then they should, as we just showed, have some very easy ways to prove it if they want it proven. We don't know what they do. It could be a prankster. It could be an anthropologist. It could be, some lone rebel group that really doesn't want to give away what their location is, so they're not going to be too exact about what data they're doing. And that's any given one of these theories, though, we have to look at what the motive for that would be and how they would proceed. And if it doesn't hold up consistently, it puts a mark against that theory.
Let's bum everybody out and talk some teleportation. Now, you're, okay, I want you to, this is going to be off of the top of your head. I don't think you've got this data in front of you. But you did talk about the amount of information that would need to be streamed from our own body to reconstruct. And you spewed out these numbers in your presentation, and I went, well, there goes that idea.
It is a lot of data, yeah.
It's a lot.
And, bandwidth-wise, if you're trying to transmit a human's memory, that actually might not be too big. We don't know what the processing power of a human brain is, but what's stored on there, especially because you can probably get away with compressing a lot, you might be able to send that in something relatively small. Maybe even something that we could store nowadays in the terabyte range. But that's still a lot of bandwidth. You think about New Horizons, the probe that just went by Ultima Thule a few days back. That thing is going to take some photographs. They're going to take 2 years to transmit back to us because it's transmitting at about 1 kilobyte a second.
Wow.
And it's not because we just, it's not that old a tech. That thing launched in 2005 at the best we had at the time.
Right.
It's just that the power needed to send the signal, even with huge dishes listening to it, is enormous to send a single byte that we're going to pick up. And so it has to send that data really slow, and it doesn't have that much power. And you can ramp the power up a lot. It doesn't have much power because it's got a really tiny power source. A planet in another solar system has to ramp that power up even more, but they would have gigantic reactors to do that with.
But when we're talking about the human body, now what kind of bandwidth? What kind of
scales up hugely? And you would potentially talking about needing to use potentially. That could be up in the 10 to 24th bytes or more. And you could compress a lot of that too. It's a lot of it's repeated data. Someone might not be okay with being compressed though, but we don't even have all the same DNA for each of our individual cells. If you actually wanted to send a blueprint of every last atom in someone's body in terms of what it was and where it was, we have something like 30 trillion cells, something along those lines, and each one of those cells is like 1 trillion atoms in it. You're talking about a packet that would need a terabyte line and would take still decades to send, even at that speed. At 100 times faster than the fastest publicly available internet, it still is going to need centuries to send a single person.
Yeah,
and that's problematic when you're using for a laser too, because those things spread out over distance. So if you want to avoid signal noise, you do still have a bandwidth limit.
So to understand what you just said, so you've got 25 trillion cells in our body. Okay, that's one daunting figure. But what's inside of each one of those cells?
Trillions of individual cells. I mean, just the DNA code alone is 1 billion of those. Now, to be fair, you can compress a lot. You really don't need to have an exact copy of every last strand of DNA, because even though most of those have one little mutation off from each other, you can send just that mutation, or you don't even have to send it. I don't really care if one of my cells arrives with a different DNA packet than it had before, if it's still one of my DNA strands. It's just a little different. So you don't have to send a perfect copy. But that gets in the question of how perfect a copy needs to be the original person, too. And so if you're trying to send all those last data states, and you might not have a choice. You might have to send the entire, when I take a photograph of someone, I don't get to Photoshop that photo. I'm taking their exact data. If that's the way you capture that information, then you have to transmit it that way, too. And that would require a ton of bandwidth. And we're talking about something like quantum entanglement as a way of sending teleporting people. That is entangling every last single atom in their body. We'll get like 1,000, I think, is our current record for entangling atoms at the same time, and that's under a very controlled circumstance.
Right.
I don't even know how you would go about doing that, but if you could, that's that's a massive, massive thing, and then the kind of computing power needed to do something like that is just obscene.
Yeah, it's obscene, and then on the back end of that, it's the amount of time that it would take to do the transfer. You might as well just fly there and take a couple 100 years, and at least you know that every atom in your body would arrive in the way that it departed, because that's the other thing. You don't know if it's going to reconstruct. Now, the other part of this is your consciousness. Would that also be part of the teleportation? I understand your memories could be, but what about the stuff that makes Isaac? That's
the $1 million question, isn't it? Because we don't know.
Right.
I tend to subscribe to the John Locke approach on continuity of identity and consciousness, not because it's particularly provable. It's none of these things have any more evidence supporting them than any of the others, but because it's the one that seems to make the most sense to me. Or at least is the most comfortable to settle on. And the notion there is so long as I'm continuing my existence more or less the same without any really abrupt changes, then my identity is persistent too. But that becomes a real issue if let's say I make a copy of myself on another planet. What about the copy that's back here? What about the copy they brought online that was not quite right, so they stored it, and another one's used, and then they wake up the damaged one because they've got how to repair it. Now there's 2 of me there. Which one's me? Well, apparently they're both me, but they're not really the same as each other anymore. And I've never heard a explanation for how to cope with that was entirely solid across the board and met all the goals we'd have for just being somewhere else. And I don't think that you're going to get one either, because it's a little bit too subjective. Certain things are abstract, and things like consciousness and identity are very abstract concepts. And I do not think that we're going to get a satisfactory answer to those.
Do you commit suicide? Right? You know what I mean? You hit go. Yeah. You hit go, and then you hit the.
There's the Star Trek teleporter,
yes,
transporter.
right.
If you're reassembling me down there and disassembling me up here, did you just kill me? And of course, you've got the examples where I think they cover that in I can't remember the episode. It was the one with the 2 Rikers in it, though. There's a copy of him left alone on a planet that was the extra that bounced back. Which one of those is the real one?
Right.
Which one, and there is no clear answer on something like that I at least I have not heard an answer that would be 100% solid.
Now, and there's if teleportation isn't the answer and entanglement isn't the answer, science today, and for me, I think is when it gets to quantum computing and qubits, is now strongly suggesting, Isaac, that parallel worlds are real, right? And for quantum entanglement, for a qubit to operate correctly, and the concepts of quantum computing, well, then we have to accept a parallel world, an infinite situation to our right and to our left.
Not necessarily. We've got, we have quite a few quantum theories, but the two people I'm most familiar with are Copenhagen and Mini-Wards. Mini-Wards has a lot of following. It's the other big one, but Copenhagen tends to be the slightly more popular one with physicists, at least last I checked, not by a lot. They both allow quantum computing as it appears to take place. There is not a single shred of evidence of any sort to back up Copenhagen, Mini-Wards, or any of the other quantum interpretations. Mm-hmm. We don't know.
Right.
If those exist, that's a pretty big deal. And I think a lot of folks like Mini-Wards because it gets around the anthropic principle and fine-tuning issues for the universe. Those are a big problem in Copenhagen. And I tend to subscribe to Copenhagen myself, though I think Mini-Wards would be more fun if it was true.
Mm-hmm.
If you have those, that starts getting a question, do I bother to travel to another solar system when I can just step off onto a copy of Earth where humanity got wiped out 70,000 years ago by, I can't remember the name of that asteroid, the one that they think killed off a lot of civilization at the time, or people at the time. I don't think there was really civilization yet. You go to that copy of that planet because it's identical to ours, except it's uninhabited. That's the perfect place to set up a colony. I mean, why go tailform Rigel or Vega? Or I guess actually pronounced Vega now. I heard that recently.
Yes,
why
right.
go colonize those places when you can just step out onto an empty copy of your own planet that's different and there would be so many versions. Every last minor variation, even one atom being one place off in a single rock, is its own multiverse. So you have a virtually unlimited number of these. Technically, it's still a finite number, but it's one of those ones where you actually have to have an exponent on the exponent, This near infinite number of these things. Why would you ever colonize another solar system in a case like that, except to maybe your own sun starting to burn out,
Are you okay with that, though? Because if quantum mechanics, quantum theory, and quantum computers and qubit, if it continues down its path, Isaac, you are going to have to accept either the many worlds or Copenhagen. You're going to have to go one way or the other, or maybe even another reality that we haven't theorized yet. But are you okay with that? Does your head explode, or are you okay?
My head explodes whenever I deal with Mini-Wards or the size of the universe. People talk about the sheer scale of that, and trying to come to understand astronomical times. You can study this stuff for years. You can learn all the math, and your brain still never really wraps around the scale involved. As to whether or not, if another theory comes up or gets proven, I think I'd be fine with it, but you never know until it's time. I'd like to think I would be. That's the core of science, is adapting when the knowledge changes, figuring out what it means, and you follow the truth. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you accept it or not either. The truth is the truth. But personally, I'd like to think that I would. I'd be a little disappointed in myself if I didn't. But we all have a blinders on about something. It's the human nature. So
what I have been enjoying lately is listening to the physicists, the celebrity physicists too, as well. I listen to all of their presentations. I study it. How they are getting farther apart from each other, where they thought that they had a grip on things, certainly 50 years ago, but it is unraveling now because the data is coming in faster than anybody, and now anybody's theory gets thrown on the table and it's as valid as the next.
To a degree. Most of the folks that people recognize the names of this or that physicist, I don't do any active research. I don't know how much Tyson does. Nye obviously doesn't do any, at least I'm aware of. Michio Kaku, I think, still does. But, the totally new minds presenting most of these theories are usually folks people never heard of. And you have to keep up with that. And sometimes those can get debunked. Sometimes they get proven. A lot of times they sit for a decade or two. They might get a really big news article talking about them, and they just kind of linger, not getting proven or disproven for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
It takes a long time. We've done so well advancing the field of physics in the last century that we're actually starting to slow down now, because any new step we need to take requires these huge projects that even if you could just give an infinite blank check to, still take 10 or 20 years to produce the experiment that's going to find out. So something like fusion, the biggest hold up on that is it takes us so long just to build the thing, and it's hard to rush that process,
Yeah, I know. And you're absolutely, I've thought so much about, I've got to take a break here in 15 seconds, but when you have guys like Lawrence Krauss or Brian Greene, and that are doing this research and putting these ideas out there, if anything comes to fruition, it's going to take 20, 25 years. They don't have another project to move on to after that. You know what I mean? It takes so much time to do the one version of something.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. And I mean, I think they'd agree, too. It's not about the individual. It's a progressive generational step. We as a community, field specific or everybody in general, because everybody commits these things, even if they're just paying tax on it. It takes a long time. And, people always talk about, could we do these projects that would take us, thousands of years to do? I say, well, we have done this. We built cathedrals that took centuries. We've committed to so many projects that are multi-generational. And this is just one example. It takes time, but we got lots of time.
Now, we're going to take a break right here. I'm going to hold you over for a little overtime. I want to discuss two things that we didn't get to tonight. One is dark energy. I want to go there. And I want to close out the show with a discussion on disclosure and what is going on now and the possibility of what our government may or may not know when it comes to alien and ET contact. You want to stand by right there?
I'll be glad to.
Our guest is Isaac Arthur. Been waiting for this. Stay right there. We'll be right back after this short break. Going to do a little overtime. This is Fade to Black. Stay with us.
Here, and you are listening to my boy Jimmy Church on JimmyChurchRadio.com.
Despite popular opinion, reading a book will not make you smarter.
But listening to Jimmy Church will.
Hurricanes, earthquakes, wildfires. This year we've experienced more than our fair share. This is Jimmy Church of Fade to Black, and last month I decided to make sure my family does not have to worry about food should we get caught in a real emergency situation. Introducing Numana, a healthy, storable product that tastes so good that you'll want to eat it every day instead of just during those times of duress. All Numana products have a 25-year shelf life, are MSG and GMO-free, no preservatives, and are made in America. With the Numana pack in your home, you'll be able to sleep at night knowing that you've protected your family. Not only have I tasted and tested, I own it. Now you can too. Just click on the Numana banner on JimmyChurchRadio.com and use the promo code Jimmy when you order. In addition to a discount, we'll send you an autographed Fade to Black t-shirt. Seriously, go Beckley Tappy. This is Jimmy Church of Fade to Black, and I take Life Change Tea supplements every single day. It's what I do. Click on their banner at JimmyChurchRadio.com. When you take the beans from Central America with dashes of Indonesian and African mixed in and then roast it to the dark side of Fade to Black, you create the ultimate brew of fringe. Introducing the Fade to Black blend from Rivermoon Coffee. Yes, Rivermoon's darkest customized roast was created for the love of Fade to Black. The alchemy of masterful roasting and smoking the beans is in every sip of this full-bodied, dark Java. I need my coffee dark, deep, with distinct bittersweet chocolate highlights, just like the bunker. Leaning further into the darkness of the roast is Fade to Black blend from Rivermoon Coffee. Just click on the banner at JimmyChurchRadio.com and use the promo code F2BBLEND for 15% off of your order today. Go Beckley Teppy.
Hi, folks. CBD is the home run hitter for health right now. Why, you ask? Because of what it does for the body. Unfortunately, I can't tell you all about the benefit. There's reasons. Do your due diligence and log on to AncientLifeOil.com. That's AncientLifeOil.com. Ancient Life Oil uses organic ingredients and is blended in coconut oil for some of the best benefits. Legal in 50 states and non-psychoactive. Log on to AncientLifeOil.com. That's AncientLifeOil.com.
This is Jimmy Church of Fade to Black, and my family is safe because of Numana Emergency Food Storage. Just go to the Numana banner at JimmyChurchRadio.com. Promo code Jimmy10.
Are you intrigued by Paranormal Talk Radio? You'll love the new Paranormal Radio app from TalkStream Live. You'll find a great selection of talk shows covering UFOs, ghosts, strange phenomena, and much more. Download the Paranormal Radio app now and start listening to the very best in paranormal talk entertainment, including the network you're listening to right now, the Paranormal Radio app. Free in Google Play and the iOS App Store.
Erica, Brittany, Gabby, and you're listening to JimmyChurchRadio.com.
It's not a lifestyle we chose. We were born this way. KGRARadio.com.
This is KJCR at JimmyChurchRadio.com.
Welcome back, Fade to Black. I'm your host, Jimmy Church, doing a little overtime tonight with our guest, Isaac Arthur. Want to remind everybody what's going on this week. Tomorrow night, Carolyn Ford is going to be here. And, of course, that is Einstein and the Ancient Crystal Skull of Consciousness. Wednesday night, David Wilcock is going to be here. Thursday night, Fader Night, Teresa Yannaris, of course. Divine Frequency on the airwaves, followed by Open Lines all night long. Our guest, of course, is Isaac Arthur. And Isaac, right before the break, where I was, discussing with you the new realities that are hitting astrophysicists and physicists and cosmologists around the world, is dark energy, and this is totally new. This is when I say totally new, relatively new over the last few years.
They offer colloquium when they were first presenting this notion. I was an undergrad at the time, too, so I was mostly there for the coffee and cookies. But they had just started noticing with the supernova charts they were building up, the data for that the expansion rates for the universe weren't quite matching up to what we thought they were going to be. And at that time, the margin of error bars was so big that we couldn't actually tell if it was expanding, contracting, or whatever.
Right.
But as we refined that down, we started seeing that it's accelerating its expansion rate. And that is a weird one because it kind of arguably breaks conservation of energy, depending on how one chooses to look at that. That's really much more complex. But we'd already kind of suspected that in the first place because space takes energy to make. And all the way back in Einstein's day, we were starting to wonder about whether or not energy was really conserved in that context. And it's really shaping, the future of what the universe is going to look like down the road. We don't know how fast it's accelerating yet or if it's going to speed up. And so we don't even know what the end of the universe is going to look like right now because it could be a big rip scenario where everything gets shredded apart in 100 billion years or 20 billion years, or it could be the more classic heat death that we've tended to settle on in more recent times. And with the awesome thing about right now is that we will probably get to see most of the cool new knowledge that comes from this over the next 20 or 30 years. Although this is one of those problems that might be, where it's coming from could be going on for centuries to come.
And, when we talk about gravity, there are so many different things going on. There's the gravity of our cells and what's holding, us together. There's that. And expanding out from that, of course, the solar system and Earth and what's holding us together. You go out a step beyond that and the galaxy and how that's spiraling and how gravity is holding that together where we're not spinning off into everything. And then the opposite seems to be happening with dark energy, which is forcing things in the opposite direction and not pulling it together. And the original concept that I think everybody accepted for so long was that gravity, the universe would expand until gravity would overtake it, then pull it back together, and we would have another big bang. It would be like rinse, repeat, lather and
cyclic bangs.
Right, cyclic bangs. Yeah. And now I think we're starting to take a harsh look at this, that we just may be on a one-way trip here, right? Mm-hmm. That it just may expand out, and eventually, if we're still around, we will be completely by ourselves, that the cosmos will be black.
There's a second part of that. I mean, that's one of the scenarios could happen. Just the local galaxies by us all merge together, as they're already doing. All galaxies are cannibal, and so is Andromeda. And they were talking about Andromeda and the Milky Way colliding, but we'll actually probably end up colliding with the Whirlpool, one of the other ones first.
Right.
Those will all merge together, and everybody else will expand out and we'll never see them. 150 billion years from now, you wouldn't be able to see those galaxies. It says the most traced redshift of things disappearing over the cosmological event horizon. But in some big rip scenarios, for instance, if this pushing force of dark energy keeps growing, you could get to the point where it was actually ripping apart quarks themselves. And you actually can't really rip quarks apart, because when you do, you make more quarks. So there are some scenarios for like the big rip, for instance, where this just kept growing until you had a new big bang going on everywhere, all at once. And we're not actually sure that's not how that happened in the first place. So we talk about the size of the universe being really tiny, but we only mean the chunk we can see. It could have expanded everywhere and already been infinite in size in the first place.
Right.
More infinity of infinity. What's infinity plus infinity or times infinity? It's still infinity. And so that is actually one possibility. Of course, we would not survive that if it's ripping quarks apart. But you could have that as something that happens every 100 billion years or so. The universe just re-erupts as a whole new, Big Bang. And while I don't subscribe to myself, one of the more popular competitors for the Big Bang for a long time, not the steady state, but a quasi-steady state universe, where you had little micro Big Bangs going off all the time, or the idea was that you'll have a little bit of hydrogen appearing here and there at random everywhere all the time. And people say, oh, you wouldn't have that. And then we say, well, we got dark energy doing that now. This is new space that's appearing out of nowhere, and it's doing it in probably tiny amounts. We haven't actually been able to nail that down yet, but you could easily have tiny, tiny little packets of new space popping up in you all the time. You ignore them because all the electrical forces hold your body together, but they'd still be going on, And so you might have new little bits of space popping up inside you, and that's what causes the expansion. It just adds up over distance.
Well, and there's two directions I want to go in really quickly. One, our Big Bang just happened to be perfect in that gravity was right, the forces were right, and our universe just wants to create things, right? Mm-hmm. Life is just like we just planets and stars. But if it was off by just a little bit, things don't join. It's just...
Probably not. I mean, that's the fine-tuning approach, is that everything is exactly perfect for us, or in a very tiny range compared to what it could be.
Right.
But I have to say the models done for that are still iffy enough that you couldn't say that something else wouldn't form with patterns like we have now, and just might be very different. But and that's just throwing out there that those models aren't really all that precise yet. It does look like the universe we're in is just perfect. And so you get the anthropic principle that says, is it a freak coincidence, or is it just that we are the only places that had anything emerge to notice that we were perfect? All the other places, no life emerges to notice that their universe sucks for life.
Right. But that's exactly right, in that there could be infinite universes out there that are dead, right? Mm-hmm. That just don't have any action going on. Their Big Bang was just off by a little bit, and it just wasn't right.
Yeah, the physical constants were just a little bit off for that, or the time for the inflation was not quite right, and there's so many ways that could have played out that would result in no life. And the only caveat on that is that we probably don't want to rule out that quite a few more than we would tend to expect might be life-bearing. But I wouldn't expect most of them to be. It just might be more than we tend to think, and right now we think that it's a one of those numbers that's so small that you need exponents to express it. And that again, that goes in the fine-tuning anthropic principle approach. You do have to be careful with these numbers, for instance, because sometimes we'll say, oh, the universe is so huge, we have to have X, Y, or Z. Earth takes up only a very tiny portion of the volume of space that's habitable here. And if you want to get to the next system that it has a star in it, you have to encompass a volume that's a quadrillion times larger than the sphere you'd make around the Earth, the sun at the Earth's distance.
Right.
And that's empty. That's pretty empty anyway. And we don't really think about anything being there, but Earth is already a 1 in a quintillion thing just by our solar system existing, by being so huge. We don't know what the math and numbers on these really suggest too well yet, and we're going to find out more. But And as we say, you have to be patient with science. It takes a long time.
Well,
it's fun, though.
And when we take that concept, because the odds of your DNA, right, the odds of it, when you talk to different scientists out there, and I'm not going to name names, but we'll say, well, look, it was just, lightning hit some amino acids on a crystal in a creek bed. Boom, we had DNA, Well,
we have no idea how that happened.
Right.
We know two things reasonably well by inference: that it would have taken a decent chemical mixture and that you need to have some kind of energy input for them to live on. And so, and people sometimes think we know more about this than we do. All we do is we look at what circumstances on Earth might have had those and say, well, that's a place it could have happened. We don't know yet. We have no idea. It could have been thermal vents. It could have been tidal pools. It could have been panspermia, comets coming down when the Earth cooled that had some microbes in them. All we can say with reasonable certainty is you need to have a good chemical mixture and some sort of energy input. You need the raw materials and the fuel.
And a lot of time.
Yeah.
A lot of time. Now, then, this is where I'm going to push you a little bit. The odds, and you always present these numbers really well, how many zeros that we're going to put on the odds of DNA being created. I don't know, but it would probably go from here to Mars. That's a big number if you are going with luck, right? Okay, which is what we're talking about here, chance. Or could there be, and I'm not talking about God or religion, but could there have been a divine type of interference here from maybe panspermia or an ET connection where we were placed here, that it wasn't odds and it wasn't luck and it wasn't nature? That
possibly, yeah. I mean, yeah. I think the key thing, and sometimes folks miss this, with the science, when you're doing it, you are obliged to stick to a certain specific window for evidence, and you don't stray outside that. The moment you start straying outside of that, you're no longer doing science. Doesn't mean you're doing illegitimate thought, but you're not doing the science anymore. And I always try to stick to that because I don't like when scientists start talking outside their fields too much. But simulation hypothesis is a great example of that. We say, what if we all live inside a civilization? Inside a simulation. And say, well, that's very obviously an example of intelligent design. Call it what you want for something like that, whether it's a programmer named Bob or whether it's God or the great sandwich maker, you don't know. But that is something that's very plausible to do. We probably can simulate an artificial universe of some scope with artificial intelligence inside it that would think that that was the real universe. And
we're close to doing that now. We're close to doing that now with gaming. I mean, it's getting really good.
And a big key thing on this is that those universes don't actually have to be real, like in the sense of being the same as the one you're in. You can set the physical laws to whatever you want them to be. So what passes for life inside those, even though it thinks it's alive and by any reasonable standard would have to be considered alive, might not resemble the universe it was simulated from at all. Because that might be an experiment they were doing to see what strange things could actually produce life. We don't know about that higher level of reality if it exists, and I would tend to argue that it's not really any more real than ours. This is not a new concept, it's just dressing up in science. Evidence is what matters for that, though, and we don't have any evidence of it. We don't have any evidence for or against it, and we probably can't actually get any. We will probably never know where life started on Earth, whether it was in a comet impact or a thermal vent or a tidal pool. We certainly aren't going to know which one it was. And we would have no way to check to see if somebody had done that. So we can only logically infer that somebody probably didn't do that because they should still be around where we can see and contact them if they were. But again, you can poke holes in that argument very easily too. You can't conclude that that's what happened. You can merely say it's a possibility on the table.
Yeah, and when I consider all of that, and especially when we when we are told by orthodox academics that Darwin and development and evolution, and where we are talking about hundreds of millions of years and events, our ancestors were fish, but here we are today. Well, the reason why I poke holes in that is common sense. You and I, Isaac, Homo sapien sapien, 150,000 years old. That's it, right? That's it. Well, there isn't anything. There isn't, of course, the missing link, but there isn't the slow development into us where we just appeared here. And that I have a hard time accepting that we just appeared, that suddenly one day there was something else, and that virtually overnight we are here. And I don't understand how that is possible.
Evolution doesn't always happen, and it's kind of this long progression thing. If you have a really radical mutation that is actually useful and most are not, that can spread very quickly. We'll say, oh, that was very quick, but 150,000 years, and that you can only nail that down to maybe a couple of thousand years. Think about what we've done in 1,000 years.
Right.
Think about what some species of the missing link, the missing link is a 1,000,000-year time gap. That's a lot of stuff going on.
But we're the only ones, though. That's the thing. We're the only ones on this planet. That's it. That do what we do.
And there is an exclusivity on that. If you're the first species that pops up somewhere, you make it harder for new ones to emerge. Now, that's not to say that we were the only one. It does look like there were maybe some other Homo sapien, not Homo sapien, other hominid lines that were probably fairly intelligent too. And we might have inbred with them or knocked them out.
But we don't know.
It's really hard to say.
I know.
We need more data.
But we just don't know. And I don't know if we'll ever find out. I really don't. Which takes me to my last question. When it comes to disclosure, and in our UFO community, in the conspiracy community, disclosure, the D word, is a really big deal. And last year in 2018, we had a lot of UFOs in the headlines, starting with the New York Times and everything that happened last year. It seemed like the Pentagon and somebody out there is feeding this information back into the community. And it got to be out of control with Fox and CNN and BBC and everybody reporting on this last year. Do you think that the government is sitting on information that they are not releasing to us when it comes to the ET question, whether we are alone or not?
It's a good thing to put the caveat there. I'm sure the government's sitting on information we don't have access to. Whether that's military secrets or extraterrestrials or just, individual, I'd worked with some secret stuff back in the past, and it was usually something very mundane, like a specific frequency that this airplane would be emitting at when it was at high speed. Mm-hmm. When we find that, I can't speculate as what we're going to find in those because we don't have it yet. And one of the things I always object to folks doing is assuming that, there's not going to be something there. Assuming something's there, that's bad too. But there is a habit of always assuming there's nothing there from the skeptic angle. And that's not good skepticism. You wait until you have the information, and then you draw conclusions from that information. You check if that information is valid. And until you have it, it's fundamentally wrong from a scientific perspective to be speculating on it. We don't know what it says yet. Mm-hmm. When we have that information, we check its validity. We try to test its validity in whatever ways we can come up with. And then we draw conclusions off that. And whatever those conclusions say are the ones we have to go with. If they're good conclusions, those might get knocked out 10 years later by a second round of disclosure of more recent information. You always got secrets that are going to stay secret because they're time sensitive. Mm-hmm. I don't expect to see anything there per se, but we'll see. We'll see when we find out what it says.
With all of the, we were just talking about science fiction and the gaming community, and that entire genre, as big as it is, and consider the rest of the planet, and forget about our UFO community. We're already believers. We're okay with it. But with everything that happened with the New York Times and that explosion of the ET question that went out, nobody jumped off any buildings, Isaac, right?
No, that's one of the things that always gets me is people say, well, maybe the aliens are staying away from us because they're worried we'll have shock. Right. I think that a poll is like half the population believes in intelligent alien life, whether they believe it's busy or not.
Right.
And I'm actually one of the rare exceptions that I don't think it's around just because I'm sure we'd have seen it in a more overt fashion. But I wouldn't find it shocking. I always took as a given that there were intelligent species all over the place until I thought on it more with the Fermi paradox angles. That wouldn't rock I'm sure it would be rather shocking. You can believe in something, but when you have it come face to face with you, it is a little bit different. I imagine it would cause quite the firestorm. But I don't think it would be a civilization-wrecking event and probably be old news by the end of the year.
I agree with you. No, I think it'd take 15 minutes to become old news.
Yeah, it would cycle because I would use the example of death. The denial phase, the acceptance phase, and it's not those happen once; they keep cycling over and over again on you.
But is it because of people like you and the gaming community and the movies and Hollywood and science fiction where we are just acclimated now?
I think though, to a degree, yeah. Now, humans are by our very nature very adaptable in our thinking. People forget this. We always used to believe there were other intelligent life forms than ourselves on this planet until relatively recently. That's a new thing that there was nothing shocking about the idea of a Yeti to the people of ancient Europe,
Right.
Whether or not they happen to believe in that one specifically. This phase that we're going through right now, which may persist, again, there might be nothing there. But I don't think we'd be overwhelmed by it, but it does help to acclimate to it. And as I say, with science fiction, that's part of the feedback loop that helps us we incorporate these new ideas, we ponder them, we contemplate them, we come up with things we never expected out of it. No one's going to predict the smartphone, right? And we adjust. And it does have an effect. You can't just say that, if we find aliens tomorrow, they land on the White House front lawn, yeah, that's going to be very big news, and it's still going to be big news 20, 30 years from now. But business as usual will persist. We are designed to handle that kind of stress.
You know what? You're right. You're right about that. And again, I think it'd be about 15 minutes. It would be live on TV, and then Trump's going to step out and go, "Get this thing off of my lawn."
Yeah.
It's blocking traffic on Pennsylvania Avenue.
And you think about the effect on it, say, so how long is it going to be before somebody invites them to go to their restaurant because they want them to be the first to say, the alien visitors came to my restaurant first.
That's right. I'm down.
Go to the casino. We are by our nature practical creatures.
So what's up next for you? What's your next video release? What's the subject?
Making suns, actually. That's the Thursday episode is going to be about how you could make stars if you wanted to, and some variations you might make that be better than the naturally occurring ones. Which would be an interesting one if we start seeing stars popping up where they didn't used to exist before in the cosmos. And it's another one of those great examples where we say it's not necessarily all that high tech. Technology helps. It's just brute force. And maybe you don't have to spend years traveling to other star systems because you just build your own solar systems closer at hand.
How often do you do? Are you like on a week-to-week production schedule?
Yeah, we do the weekly episode on Thursday mornings, and we do occasionally do extra bonus episodes or live streams, interviews, that kind of thing. But we always have an episode every Thursday. It's anything else is a bonus, and I don't think we haven't missed one in. Actually, I think we never missed one since we started doing it weekly. So,
absolutely incredible work that you do, and from myself and our audience here, I want to thank you because. You've managed to crank out not only a large volume of material, but just absolutely fascinating and well-researched.
Oh, thank you so much for having me on, too.
And we're going to have you on the next time around, everybody. I'm just going to let you know. We're going to do the Fermi paradox, and it'll be the entire show. Maybe we'll have to do a two-parter, just like you've done. Yeah, your compendium.
So much material. Yeah.
So much material. Isaac, thank you so much, and we'll talk to you very soon. But thank you for taking the time tonight.
Looking forward to it. Thanks for having me on.
Isaac Arthur. And everybody, just go to IsaacArthur.net. The links are over at jimmychurchradio.com. And I think we might have his YouTube channel up there, too, as well. But, of course, it is over at IsaacArthur.net. Fascinating conversation. Now, I got to remind everybody what's going on this week. Tomorrow night, Caroline Ford will be here. We're going to discuss, of course, for the first time, Einstein, the ancient crystal skull of consciousness. That'll be tomorrow night. Wednesday night, David Wilcock is here. We're going to take a little look at 2018, the year that was, but we're going to look straight forward into disclosure and the Great Awakening for 2019. That'll be Wednesday night. Thursday night is another Fader night. Teresa Inaris is going to be here. Divine Frequency on the airwaves, followed by Open Lines all night long. With that, I'm going to get out of here. Thank you to Isaac Arthur once again. Fascinating, perfect conversation tonight. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Fade to Black's executive producer is Rita Camarion. Show is produced by Hilton J. Palm, Renee, Dennis, and Bob. Announcers are Steve Harder, Gene Vito, and Mark D. Kovar. Webmaster is Drew the Geek. Music, Doug Aldrich. Intro, Spaceboy, spaceboymusic.com. Fade to Black is produced by KJCR for the Game Changer Network, and syndication is KGRA, The Planet. Thank you to Isaac Arthur, isaacarthur.net. This broadcast is owned and copyrighted 2018 by Fade to Black and the Game Changer Network. It cannot be rebroadcast, downloaded, copied, or used anywhere in the known universe without written permission from Fade to Black and the Game Changer Network. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Follow me on Twitter at JChurchRadio. Until tomorrow night, everybody be safe. Go Backley Tappy.